how they died in the woods. I spent the last 6 months scrubbing my skin with bleach until it bled, trying to wash away the memories of the screams and corpses. Someone has to know what actually happened in those woods. The truth that the police reports don't say. I will forever be haunted by my own cowardice. I will spend every night for the rest of my life seeing those geometric shadows and hearing the wet, rhythmic thump of footsteps that didn't have bones to guide them. To David, Emma, and Mark, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I looked at the hives instead of your faces. I'm sorry I ran when you needed me. I hope this acts as a warning, a perimeter, a barrier. Because once you see the pattern in the bark, once you notice the trees are breathing through 1,000 tiny weeping pores, it's already too late. You aren't a guest in those woods anymore. You are the soil. It all starts with us being the usual stupid college kids. Spring break rolled around and we wanted to have some fun on the lake. David's uncle owned a cabin out in some backwater place. It was a long drive for us, the four of us jam-packed into Emma's little sedan. But whatever, it was time to get shit-faced at a cabin, away from the busy world. David was driving, Emma and Mark kept making out in the back seat. "Will you two cut that shit out? Fucking nasty," David harped from the driver's seat. "Come on, David, what's the big deal?" Mark said as he pulled his mouth away from Emma. "Guys, look, we're getting close. Can you just save it for later?" I chimed in, simply not to hear more arguing. "Whatever, Andy. You're just jealous your girl didn't want to come with." Emma piped real quick back at me with a smirk. "Whatever. So David, what's up with this cabin anyways?" I look over to him as I roll my eyes at Emma. "How come you never brought us out here before?" "My uncle said to never go to the cabin. He never said anything more. He just told us to stay far away," David said calmly. "But since he's passed, I got the key," David said with a greedy smile. "Well, damn, dude. No respect for your uncle, huh?" Mark speaks up. "Nah, screw that guy," David said with malice. "He was batshit crazy." "Are the woods dangerous or something?" I asked. "Hell no. I think my uncle was just lost in the head or something. If it was dangerous, why would he build a cabin out there anyways?" David replies. "Fair point," Mark says back. "As long as there's room for myself and Emma." He winks. "You guys are gross," I say without looking behind me. The drive took us through one of those real hick backwater towns, where everything is rusted and looks like it was built 50 years ago, but we drove right through and into a dirt road leading into the woods. It felt like another hour before we finally reached the cabin. It looked straight out of a horror movie. "Is this really it, Dave?" Mark said with a disapproving glare. "Well, yeah, it's a cabin in the woods, not that damn Marriott." David snaps back quick. "At least we can get hammered in there without anyone calling the cops," Emma said, rubbing her hand on Mark's shoulder. I looked at my phone. No signal, of course. "Well, I guess we should unpack and get set up for the night," I say. Everyone nodded in agreement. As we unloaded our bags, and most importantly, the beer, Emma, of course, did nothing, making Mark do all her heavy lifting. It only took a bit before the car was unloaded, and we were ready to start a drunken bender. The cabin was a lot nicer inside than it was on the outside. "Damn, David, this place ain't bad. So weird your uncle never let anybody out here," I say, as I make some food. "Like I said, he was crazy," David said with cold detachment. "Come on, you damn losers. Let's get a fire going and the beer drinking." All right. Dave stretches. "Sun will be going down soon anyways." "I can give you a hand." Mark steps up and goes outside with David, leaving me alone with Emma. "So, Andy, how come your girlfriend didn't want to come? She's fake, isn't she?" Emma smirks. "Very funny, Emma. No, she picked up extra studies that go over spring break," I say. "Nerd!" Emma yells as she slaps my back. I just chuckle at her before stepping out to join the rest. Time passed quickly. The fire was roaring and everyone was drinking their hearts out. Well, everyone but me. I wasn't in the mood for drinking. Mainly because as soon as the sun set, I couldn't shake this feeling in my chest. I realized that in the last few hours, I hadn't seen or even heard a single animal. The woods around the cabin were so brutally calm, other than the 3 idiots I was with. I looked over to my friends. Emma and Mark were poorly dancing. David was slamming back a beer while mocking them, but I couldn't shake this deep-seated pool forming in my gut. What's got you so down, dude? You need a beer? Mark sits next to me, out of breath from dancing. No, I'm good. I just realized I haven't seen a single squirrel or anything, I say. And we make a lot of noise. Probably spooked everything away. Mark says with a shrug. No, it's something heavier than that. Like, we stumbled somewhere that they don't live, I say, letting out more worry than I ever knew I had. Stop being a pussy, dude, Mark says as he punches my shoulder. Just slam back a beer or two, and I'll help you feel better. Before I could retort, I saw it on Mark's shoulder. At first, I thought it was just a clump of wet forest mulch that had fallen from the canopy. Then it unfolded. Mark, don't move, I whispered, my stomach doing a slow, sick roll. The thing was the size of a plum, but it lacked a solid shell. Its body was a translucent, bruised purple, like a hematoma given legs. But it wasn't the color that made my throat tighten. It was the texture. The creature's back wasn't smooth. It was a dense, vibrating cluster of open pores. Each hole was perfectly circular, rimmed with a pale, crusty white film. They flexed slightly, as if the bug were breathing through 100 tiny open sores. What, is it a spider? Mark started to reach up. No, stay still. I leaned in, and the smell hit me. Sweet, like rotting peaches and old copper. The bug's legs weren't hooked. They were tipped with tiny, fleshy suckers that seemed to fuse with the fabric of his flannel shirt. As I watched, the honeycomb on its back began to dilate. The creature didn't have a head in the traditional sense. It just had a vertical slit that peeled back to reveal a ring of serrated, concentric teeth. It didn't just bite him, it latched right onto the side of his neck. Holy shit! Mark yelps out as he grabs the bug. He had to rip it out. I could see his skin stretch as the bug did its best to hold on, but Mark was able to tear it off with a small squirt of blood. He threw it into the fire. Fucking bitch, that hurt, Mark said, rubbing the welt on his neck. Who's the pussy now, Mark? David said. It was just a bug. Dude, that was no normal bug. Look at his welt on my neck. Mark shows the bruised red mark on his neck, about the size of a nickel. Whatever, you big baby, David replies. Everyone goes back to drinking and partying, but I couldn't stop watching Mark. He kept itching his bite. It was turning a dark purple. He was bruising it more. I was worried about him, and that bug. I really didn't want one to bite me. Emma sits down next to me. Look at those idiots, she says, sipping her beer. David and Mark were slow dancing. Yeah, they are special, I say, trying to hide my worries. Come on, Andy. Have some fun with us, she says with a kind smile. I say nothing and walk from the fire to the tree line. I needed some cool air. The firelight behind me was a warm, flickering hum, but it felt miles away the moment I stepped into the shadow of the pines. The air here was different, heavy and stagnant, with a cloying scent that reminded me of wet cardboard and old meat. But when I looked into the woods, one of the trees looked weird in the darkness. I was captivated trying to think of what the tree looks like in the light. I knew it was just the shadow being weird, but it felt so off, like the tree had a weird bush growing on it. I blinked, waiting for my pupils to dilate, for the bush to resolve into a cluster of mistletoe or a burl, but the texture was too uniform. Behind me, I heard a scream. I jolted around to see Mark chasing Emma with a frog. Of course, I thought to myself, and turned back around. The shape was gone. What the hell? I said to myself. It might just be this moonless night. I worked my way back to the fire. Everyone had calmed down. Mark was still scratching at the welt. Emma was trying to make a s'more. David was pounding another beer. David stood up and walked past everyone. Gotta go drain the old snake, he says, with a terrible southern accent, as he walked the spot in the trees. Mark, your neck looks like shit, dude, I say as nicely as possible. Yeah, it fucking itches, he replied. Here, babe, let's go inside and clean it up, Emma says, leading Mark to the cabin. I just enjoyed the peace to myself. I love them, but it can be a handful. Then the realization crashed into me. I turned around No David. I quickly moved to where I thought he would be and yelled out for him. "David, this shit is not funny, man." No response. "David, come on, man." Still nothing. Just the echo of my voice from the silent trees. "David, where the hell are you?" My voice cracking with fear. "Andy, what are you yelling at?" Mark and Emma come out. Mark has a bandage on his neck. "It's David. I think his drunk ass wandered into the woods," I say, concerned. "Well, shit. Alright, let's go look for him," Mark says, letting out a sigh. "I'm guessing he passed out somewhere," Emma says. We pulled out our phones for flashlights as we combed through the trees while calling out his name. "David!" Nothing. "Come on, David!" Still nothing. We walked for what felt like hours. "He must have wandered somewhere around here," Mark says nonchalantly. I look back, realizing we can't see the light from the fire anymore. But before I could speak up, we all heard it. A scream. A cry for help. We ran towards it as quickly as we could, and there we saw him. David laid out under a tree. We moved our lights onto him. Emma vomited immediately. Mark and I just froze. David, he was no longer a person. He had become a terrestrial reef. Something hadn't just killed him, it had repurposed him. His chest cavity had been forced open, the ribs pulled back like the shutters of a derelict house, but there was no blood left to spill. Instead, his torso was a thriving, porous landscape. Thousands of tiny hexagonal apertures had been bored directly into his muscle tissue. Perfect, geometrical pits that pulsed with a faint, sickly heat. The sight triggered a primal skin-crawling revulsion. Every inch of his exposed thighs and neck were encrusted with clusters of pale waxen bulbs, each the size of a marble. They weren't smooth, they were honeycombed with deep, dark pores. Inside those pores, things were moving. A frantic, liquid shimmering flickered beneath the surface of the bulbs. As I watched, paralyzed, one of the larger clusters of David's throat began to weep a thick, translucent amber fluid. The surface tension of a single pore snapped, and a dark, multi-jointed leg, thin as a hair, twitched out from the hole. Then another, then a dozen more. It was the same bug that bit Mark, just so many more. The sound was the worst part. A dry, papery rattling coming from inside David's lungs, as if his very breath had been replaced by a million vibrating wings. The skin around the holes didn't bruise. It simply turned a translucent parchment yellow, stretching until it was thin enough to see the writhing mass of larvae packed into the hive of his collarbone. David's jaw hung slack, and as his head tilted back, the flashlight revealed his tongue, now a bloated, perforated husk, every tiny hole teeming with those grotesque larvae. "Holy fucking hell!" Mark manages to get out. "Oh my god! He's still alive!" I say out loud, realizing David was trying to stretch his hand out to us. "We gotta get the hell out of here," Mark yells. "We can't just fucking leave him!" Emma shouts back. "Fuck David, look at him!" Mark shouts. The forest went deathly still. The kind of silence that feels like it's pressing against your eardrums. Then the rhythm starts. It was the sound of footsteps, but there was no bone in the strike. No dry snap of the heel hitting solid earth. It was heavy, impossibly heavy, but it sounded wet. It was the sound of a 100-pound bag of raw meat being dropped into a swamp over and over again. Each footfall had a secondary sound, a sickening, adhesive suction. It was the noise of boots being pulled out of the deep, thick clay, but louder, the sound of skin peeling away from the surface it had fused with. It was the running of something that didn't have solid feet. "We need to run, now!" I shout. Mark grabs Emma by her hand and we take off, sprinting into the woods. The sound of whatever it was chasing us was getting louder. I could hear it moving with horrifying grace as it slips between the trees. Then Emma tripped. Mark and I both turn around. "Emma!" Mark rushes over to her. I didn't move. I don't know why. I watched. In a still moment, while Mark was trying to lift Emma up, he was gone. Whatever it was had She snatched him and dragged him into the darkness. His screaming only lasted a few seconds. Emma couldn't stop crying. "Emma, come on! We can still get out of here!" I say, reaching for her. "You still have the keys to your car, right?" I say frantically. She only manages a soft whimper as she takes the keys from her pocket and hands them to me. "Come on, Emma, let's get the fuck out of here!" I lifted her up, holding her head close to me, not to comfort her, but to hide her sobbing. I didn't hear any movement. It must have been transforming Mark right now, the same way it did to David. We tried walking back to the cabin. We didn't see the drop-off. It wasn't a deep ditch, but it was deep enough that Emma broke her ankle. She screamed out in pain. I could see the bones sticking out, then the same sound. I didn't weigh the years of friendship or the promises we'd made. The moment that heavy, thumping stride entered the perimeter of my vision, a hulking shadow that looked like a man-shaped hive, my lizard brain took control. Wait, help, please don't. Emma's voice was a jagged spike in the dark, but I was already a dozen yards away, my lungs screaming as I sucked in the cold, thick air. I didn't look back, but my ears betrayed me. I heard the squelch of the creature's impact. I heard the sounds of her plea being cut short, replaced by a wet, bubbling gurgle, the sound of someone trying to scream through a throat that has been just separated. There was a sound like a wet sheet tearing, followed by the frantic, high-pitched skitter of 1,000 tiny legs. I burst into the clearing where the cabin stood, my eyes searching for the orange glow of the campfire, the only thing that felt right in the world, but the light was gone. The fire didn't just burn out, it had been violated. Someone or something had stomped it into the dirt with a singular, violent purpose. I didn't waste a moment. I sprinted straight to the car. I scrambled into the driver's seat, my fingers slick with cold sweat as I fumbled the keys into the ignition. The engine turned over with a violent roar, and as the high beams cut through the suffocating black, the world turned into a nightmare of overexposed, white and deep, carnivorous shadows. There, standing in the middle of the dirt track, was the source of the muddy thuds. It was a staggering, asymmetrical tower of translucent, weeping meat. It didn't have a skeleton. It had a scaffolding of chitinous insectoid legs, dozens of them, thin as needles and black as oil, thrusting out from a central trunk of human torsos that had been fused together like melted wax. The creature's skin was a shimmering, violent bruise, stretched so thin I could see the frantic, churning motion of millions of larvae pushing beneath the surface. But the center of the mass, the head, was what stopped my heart. The creature's mouth wasn't a jaw. It was a massive, circular vent of pulsating porbs, a tribophobic hide that has descended into the size of a manhole cover, anchored deep within that ring of vibrating, toothy holes. Was Emma. Her head wasn't just being carried, it was being interrogated. Her neck had been elongated into a cord of raw, stringy muscle that disappeared into the creature's throat. Her face was tilted towards me, her skin the color of wet parchment, and then perforated with that same horrific geometric pattern. As the light hit her, her dead eyes rolled in their sockets, and her mouth, now filled with a cluster of pale, writhing bulbs, opened as if to scream. But no sound came out but a wet, whistling sigh from the monster's pores. I slammed the car into gear, the tires screeching as they tore into the gravel. As I surged forward, the creature didn't move. It just stood there, its thousand-holed body exhaling a thick, amber mist that coated my windshield like grease. I pushed the gas pedal into the floorboard, the steering wheel shaking in my hands, but even as I flew past, I couldn't unsee the way Emma's hair was being woven into the creature's porous skin, becoming part of the hive. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just kept driving, the rhythmic thump-thump of the tires on the road sounding far too much like those muddy, suctionated footsteps following me home. The detectives called it survivor's guilt. They looked at my shaking hands and the way I scrubbed my skin until I bled and saw a boy who had watched his friends die to a local bear population. I let them believe it. I told them that we got separated in the dark, that I heard screams but saw nothing. I lied because if I told them the truth about the geometry, the weeping pores, and the way Emma's voice sounded like a vibrating reed. They would have locked me in a ward. And in a ward, they couldn't control the environment. Now, my life is measured in liters of bleach and the harsh, antiseptic sting of 99% isopropyl alcohol. I live in a world of surfaces. I don't see a tabletop. I see a landscape of microscopic fissures where things could hide. I don't see a person. I see a walking vessel of warm, porous meat. I am so sorry, everyone. I wish I could have saved you all. The bottomless pit in my yard. I'd forgotten about the pit for a long time. I think I found it when I was 4, before I had the words to explain why it made my stomach turn. My parents lived in my childhood home up until they died in a kayaking accident last month. Now, the house keys were in my hand, just as heavy as they felt whenever I was a child. Our home was beautiful, all 3 stories of it. A picturesque white farmhouse with red shutters and a spinning weather vane on top. The front yard, in desperate need of rain, was home to a massive oak tree with a tire swing swaying on a long branch. The tree stood the test of time, unlike my family. The home I inherited was certainly a step up from trying to cram my wife and 3 little girls into our New York apartment. No, I was happiest here, in the country. It was the flattest, driest part of Kentucky, but I loved it all the same. My youngest, Marissa, tugged on my pinky, snapping me from my thoughts. "Are you coming, Dad?" The other 2 girls were already in the house, squalling over who got what room. If only it were up to them. I grinned, kneeling down to ruffle her blonde hair. "Yeah, sweetie, just taking in the view. Your old man is glad to be back here." She nodded, slipping away from me and running into the house. Behind me, my wife Annalise shouted, "Can you help me find the kitchen stuff? I at least want us to be able to make dinner tonight." My knees protested as I stood, striding over to where she rummaged through the small moving van. I grabbed her pale arm, turning her face towards me. "Don't worry about it for now. You haven't even looked around the house yet," I said, nodding my head towards the front door. "We'll order pizza tonight." She gave me a small smile. "All right. You win. I can't say no to that." I morphed my face into a sarcastic shock. "Holy shit, mark the calendars. The day my wife tells me I won?" She slaps my shoulder playfully. "Come on. We need to separate the girls before they start beating each other over who gets what room." I obliged her, and we walked into our new home together. Needless to say, I hoped we lived and died there. I hoped my children would grow up in this house and one day inherit it from me. The floor plan was open, with our living room to the left and our spacious kitchen to the right. My mom's knickknacks still covered the shelves, everything from porcelain cats to fine china and framed vintage advertisements. I didn't look, but I knew my dad's signature beer was still in the fridge. Nothing in this house had changed since I was born, to the light blue walls to the dark cherry wood flooring. It still smelled like baked bread and firewood. A part of me ached when I thought about the absence of my parents, but in the back of my mind, I thought they might have been proud to see me now. It was a leisurely evening, spending time with family. I gave my wife the walkthrough of the place, and we settled the debate on which kid got which room. Marissa was as sweet as ever, and thought she'd probably come to hate the idea when she was older. She was beyond content with the smallest room. Hannah and Lily yelled and pulled hair and scratched until the consensus was that they shared the biggest room, or not have it at all. Then, after they calmed down, the girls practically shook with excitement when they scarfed down greasy pizza accompanied by cheap soda. I missed being that age, when it took little to please me. When Annalise was occupied with unpacking, and the girls explored each nook and cranny of the house, I had something else entirely waiting on my mind. I slinked out into the backyard, not venturing too far, just standing with my bare feet in the grass, watching as the sun set over Kentucky. The yard was lit in a blaze of orange, and settled mere yards in front of me was the strange hole that had opened up in our yard years ago. Just a sinkhole, my dad told me. He fashioned the circular concrete slab atop of it after not one, but 3 of our cats had fallen in when I was a kid. The pit was a blur in my mind. I knew somewhere deep down I had memories attached to it, but I couldn't pull them up from the recesses of my mind. I took a deep breath of the country air as the sun finally dipped behind the hills. It was probably time to settle in for the night. I hooked up our old DVD player, cuddled up with Annalise on the couch, and let her choose whatever chick flick she wanted, my treat. Then darkness had fallen, and after throwing fresh sheets on the old mattress, I cradled Annalise in my arms. She was still on edge from the moving day, I could tell. I softly trailed my hand up and down her arm, and as though to tell her everything would be all right. Then, like a soft and worn languid glim, something traced its way up my sides. I peeked my eyes open, glancing down just to see my bare skin and blankets. Annalise was still. Something else was comforting me now. Distantly, like a ghostly whiff of perfume, a sentence embedded into my brain. Come to me. It seemed to say, only the shape of the words, but I knew where they came from. It was all coming back to me now. All the memories of the pit. I waited, my body still and my breathing shallow, until I heard her drift off into sleep. I eased my arm out from underneath her, careful not to dip the mattress too much as I slid off it. I threw my robe and slippers on, and before I even knew where I was going, my feet carried me to the backyard. I knelt in the tall grass, heaving the concrete slab to the side. It barely budged, but I put my full body weight into it. It finally moved, tearing into the grass with a guttural groan. Before me, the pit was blacker than the thick new moon night. It seemed to suck all the sounds of the night down with it. It killed the sound of the crickets, the wind rustling through the grass, and the lone whippoorwill. The pit consumed it all. On my knees, I braced my hands on the edge and leaned in. A pleasantly warm gust came up from the pit, rustling my hair against my face. I closed my eyes and breathed in its scent, like damp earth and incense, like cherry and smoke, like a wedding in a church and the funeral of a mortal enemy. It was everything at once, endless and grand. It all came back to me. I didn't know why I left my home place. I shouldn't have left for college or for New York. It was a mistake. All that I needed was right here. I was 4, and the older neighbor boy came over to play. He was so entranced by the pit. He towed the edge until eventually he dropped in. His parents came looking for him, of course. My parents had denied ever seeing him that day, and being all of 4 years old, I tried my best to agree with my parents so I wouldn't get them in trouble. But the neighbor boy didn't scream as he went down. He just breathed out. I heard a long, happy sigh fade into the depths below as he fell. Somewhere in my mind, I wondered if he was still falling. Jump in. A small voice sat behind me, causing me to whip around and fall flat on my back. It was Marissa's small silhouette against the stark white of the house. Her stuffed cat toy hung limply from her hand. I sighed, pushing myself up and dusting my robe off. Baby, what are you doing outside this time of night? You yelled for me, she said simply, as though it were the most obvious thing in the world. You're outside too. Her sleepy face turned into a pout. I took one last glance over my shoulder at the pit and led her back into the warmth of the house. I'd cover it back up tomorrow and never look at it again. But few things went as planned in my lifetime. I couldn't forget about it now. That morning, I watched as Annalise's blue eyes peeked open from sleep. The sunlight filtered in through those sheer white curtains, and she smiled at me. I brushed the hay-colored hair from her face, relishing in her closeness. All good things must come to an end, though, and that morning was no exception. A piercing squeal cut through the air. My eldest daughter of 12 years, no doubt. Anne and I sprung from the bed, tossing on pants and throwing on our shirts inside out. Lily's screaming continued until the other 2 girls joined in.
"Mom! Dad!"
Lily cried out.
I'm coming!"
I yelled, crashing down the stairs with my wife close behind.
"What is it?"
Annalise cried, her eyes rapidly scanning the kitchen and living room. When there was no sign of the girl, I followed her back through the hallway that led to the screen door outside. The 3 girls were pressed against the screen, nearly tearing it in. They peered outside, shouting at whatever happened back there.
"What's going on?"
Annalise repeated, pushing through Lily and Hannah and scooping up Marissa in her arms. We both were shaking by the time we looked outside into the backyard. There was a young boy I did not recognize standing before the pit, holding a messenger bag full of newspapers. His bicycle lay discarded behind him in the yard, the wheels still spinning. I wasted no time. I shoved open the screen door, marching out into my backyard.
"Get the hell away from the edge! Kid, you hear me?"
His jaw was slack, a thin bead of saliva trailing down his chin as he peered into the abyss. His pupils were blown wide, a mirror image of the black hole before him. He hesitated, if only for a moment, like a part of him was begging to back away. I was only feet away from him when his tennis shoes dipped over the edge, taking sod with it. A strangled scream from my throat, and I was launching myself at him, but it was too late. I stumbled helplessly before the edge, watching as the little boy was engulfed by the endless pit. I vaguely registered the shrieks of my family behind me, but my ears were turned to the sweet sigh of relief the boy gave as he fell. His little voice became smaller and smaller, yet until it was gone. Annalise grabbed my arm and shook me, tears streaming down her face.
We can get a rope and we can climb down and get him. You grab the rope and I'll call the cops. God, he's probably so scared."
She spouted her words out frantically, turning on her heels to go inside, but I stopped her with a firm hand to the shoulder.
"Did you hear him hit the bottom?"
I asked. She paused.
"No."
"You won't hear it. He's gone." She shook off my grip, her face controlling into a mess of rage.
"Are you serious right now? I'm calling the damn cops. If you won't help that boy, they will."
Now, both my hands found her shoulders, and I shook her, her head thrashing back and forth as our daughters watched on in terror.
"You will not call the fucking cops,"
I say, my voice low and monotone. Apparently, I said it with such conviction that she relented onto me. She sobbed, her face against my chest. I brushed the back of her head, staring through the screen where my daughters cried and held each other. They weren't just scared of the boy falling in, they were scared of me.
"Why can't we just call them?"
Annalise said, her voice weak and trembling.
They wouldn't understand. It would make us look bad,"
I whispered. Her sniffling stopped, and she pushed back away from my chest just an inch.
"He's not the first one to have fallen down there?"
"No," I replied simply. I could feel the pit's calling caress stroke against the back of my neck, just as I did to Annalise. I shuddered out a sigh, just barely keeping it away from a moan.
"Why didn't you tell me any of this? Why's the cover off? How deep does it fucking go?"
She grabbed fistful of my button-up shirt. I shook my head, growing tired of her questions. How could I explain to her something I didn't know? The hole was there. The boy fell in, the covers going back on. That's all there was to it.
"We're going back inside,"
I said, my hands coming to the small of her back.
"The fuck we are!"
She growled, pushing away from me, fully this time.
If we can't call the cops and you won't tell me or do anything, I'm gonna help him myself."
I didn't believe my wife. Anna just wanted the pit to herself. She didn't want to help the boy. I was sure of it.
"Fine. I'm getting the girls away from this mess."
I shot back, storming back inside where my daughters cowered into the hallway.
"Imagine if it was one of our daughters in there!"
Anna shrieked, her voice breaking. I paid no mind to her. The screen door slammed shut behind me.
"Girls, come here. I'm not mad at you. Don't be scared."
"Go away!"
Lily shouted at me, holding Hannah and Marissa's hands as they scampered upstairs. I almost followed them, but I stopped at the foot of the stairs. I didn't care. I didn't fucking care. With my jaw clamped tight, I crept into the kitchen, pulling the fridge door open. I snatched a bottle of my dad's dark beer and snapped the cap off on the edge of the counter. I took a long swig, slamming the bottle down on the countertop before wiping the beer from my chin. I needed something harder. I knew Dad always kept a bottle of Beefeater gin hidden in the bottom left cabinet. Seeing it before me, there was still half of the bottle left. That was nothing myself in 20 minutes couldn't solve. I downed a few beers and the rest of the dry gin. Sprawled out on the plaid couch, the girls still sniffed and cried upstairs, but I couldn't be bothered with them. I couldn't believe the audacity of my bitch wife. She was probably talking to the pit right now, looking into it and experiencing all the same things I bestowed upon me, or better. The thought ravaged through my brain like a wriggling parasite until I shot up from the couch. With my head spinning and feet lagging beneath me, I braced my hand against the hallway wall and stumbled towards the back door. I swung the screen door open, letting it slam shut behind me. The dry grass crunched underneath my feet as I approached the hole, my wife nowhere in sight. Maybe it had already taken her. Then I heard squeaking, like stretching a rubber band in between two hands. A frayed rope coiled around the only tree in the backyard. It was too skinny to hold much weight, yet it was stretched taut, pulling into the pit's mouth. Annalise was either brave, dumb, or the pit whispered her name like it whispered mine. I got down on hands and knees, not paying any mind to the thorns and weeds that poked into my hands, nor the fire ants that threatened to bite as I destroyed their home. No, how could I care when my new home was before me? Black and endless. I crawled towards it, peering down into it.
Annalise?
I said, and the pit ate the words up like a feast. I shouted louder.
Annalise?
No response. So I grabbed hold of the taut rope. It dug into the calluses of my hands, and I gave it 3 firm yanks. I waited for a minute, calling out to her occasionally, to no avail. I had almost let go of the rope when something tugged on the other end. 1, 2, 3 times. I nearly gasped and fell forward in my drunken state, but instead I yelled again.
Come back up, Annalise!
I hated my wife for discovering the pit, even if it was my fault. I needed to coax her out, lure her into a false sense of normalcy. The truth is, now that I had remembered the pit, nothing will be normal again. At the very least, however, our children needed their mother. They could live if their father left for the pit, but not if Annalise died. She'd taken good care of them. She had to. I was certain she'd climb back up. I even started pulling on the rope, heaving as the fried strands of the rope sliced into my hands. The rope now bunched at my feet. Surely she'd be back up soon. I gave one final heave, falling back into the dirt with the effort. I sat up, dazed, and watched as the rope surfaced over the edge of the pit. My wife was not attached. I pushed myself onto my feet, swaying under the alcohol's influence and the disdain for Annalise. She let go of the rope purposefully. I knew it. And as I stilled my rampant breath, I swore I heard a distant, pleasant sigh. I could never make her sound like that. Bitch, I whispered under my breath. Stupid bitch. Now it was up to me to look after my children. I never knew Annalise could be so selfish. I expected this of myself, but her? Now I couldn't enter the pit knowing I'd leave them behind, defenseless and terrified, unless they wanted to join me. I could picture it. Hannah and Lily holding my hand and Marissa clawing around my neck. Yeah, that's what I'll do. I didn't remember trudging back into the house. I didn't remember talking to my daughters from the hallway, doing my best to calm them down and reassure them. But most of all, I didn't remember life before I was reintroduced to the pit.
We don't want to talk to you! Go away!
Hannah, my middle daughter, screamed against the wood of the door. They each holed up in Lily's room. With the 3 windows, they brought in plenty of light. Even now, I could see the midday sun creeping through the small gap under the door. That kind of blinding light was oppressive. They didn't even know about their mother yet, I realized. I sank against the hallway wall, forearms resting on my knees.
Sweetheart, your mom and I had a tiny disagreement. We made up, I promise. Girls, just come out and we'll go to the town and we'll get ice cream or something, okay?
There was a tiny beat of silence, of consideration. Then the door clicked open, and Marissa walked out.
I'll go with you.
She said, with her heart-melting smile.
But we're not leaving,
Lily yelled. I sighed.
That's fine. Marissa will just get some ice cream and you girls won't. Whatever.
My eldest shrieked back. Marissa's tiny hand grasped around my pinky and my middle finger as I pushed myself to stand.
You smell funny,
she said as I led her down the creaky stairs.
like gas.
I suppose I could have revealed a modicum of truth to her if these were about to be her last moments above ground.
It's sort of like gas. It's gas that adults drink to make themselves feel funny,
I explained. We reached the last step, and she hopped off like it was some great feat.
Why would you want to feel funny?
She asked, her soft blue eyes staring up at me.
Well, sometimes it's to forget about things, but sweetie, I guess there's just some things you can't forget about.
And my mind, instead of going to my wife of 12 years, went to the pit. I won't scream when I fall. I will sigh with toe-curling pleasure.
The car's the other way,
she said, matter-of-factly, but followed me out the door nonetheless. The hot sun curdled my blood, and I squinted my eyes as I led her to it. Marissa pointed to the hole as we approached it.
Mom yelled for me to come outside, but I was scared.
I slowed my steps a little, wiping away a bead of sweat from my wrinkled forehead.
When was this? A few minutes ago? I didn't know where she is, but she says it's very warm.
I bit down on my tongue, hard enough to draw blood. Where is Mom? She continued, her little shoes coming to a stop just before the mouth of the pit. I nodded my head towards it. Down there. She's waiting for you.
She just went on ahead.
She frowned.
Okay, then we'll get ice cream?
I smiled, kneeling beside her and brushing her hair from her face.
Then we'll get ice cream.
Then my beautiful daughter smiled so brightly at me, I thought it might make my heart burst. My daughter, my legacy, my world. My hand came to gently rest on her arm, and as her smile slowly faded, my grip turned harder. I threw my daughter into the pit, and though fear flashed on her face as she fell, the pit captured her heart like it did Annalise's. She sighed, the sigh of a young kid given their favorite candy, the sigh when they fall asleep after their favorite bedtime story. Peace and contentment in its purest form. Now, Lily and Hannah, they didn't want to come out of their rooms. I'd grab them by the scruff of their neck and drag them out here. They wouldn't regret it. They'd thank me once I was down there with them. I was outside their door again, and before I knew it, before I had time to fully process that one of my baby girls was falling endlessly to that dark chasm, my fist pounded against the thin wooden veneer.
Girls,
I said, not even recognizing my own voice.
Open this goddamn door right now or you're in big trouble.
I could hear one of them audibly gulp, then whisper to one another.
Open the fucking door.
I growled. My face was pressed so closely against the door, my nose felt as if it would break.
No!
Hannah yelled, as a loud bang followed that was presumably her stomping foot. My jaw clenched up tight. I felt something crunch in my mouth, perhaps a tooth or several. I tasted iron and felt lightning up my arm as my fist smashed through the door. My hands went through the wall as if I was punching through air and not wood. They shrieked and shrieked as I burst through the door. I paid no attention to the splinters that sliced against my skin, tearing my clothes and drawing blood. The girls clung to one another, backed against the far window. I crossed the room in no time. I don't remember how I got them down the stairs whilst they screamed and thrashed. I think I just tossed them both over my shoulder, like sacks of potatoes. They squirmed until they realized it was inevitable. They belonged in the pit. I think They knew once they looked into it. They accepted it. In the few seconds of acquainting before they delved in, they came to understand it.
"Mom's down there,"
Lily whispered, her eyes glazed over.
"She says she can't wait until we join her and that it's warm. Then go, baby. Join her."
I grunted, placing each of them down on the ground. They stood and couldn't tear their eyes off the pit.
"Will you come too, Dad?"
Hannah asked. Her pupils were as wide as the hole itself.
"Yes, baby. I'll be right behind you."
I promised, and I hoped that was true. I had nothing holding me back now. Once all my girls were in, Hannah and Lily spared a brief glance at each other, their hands intertwining. I didn't have to push them. They went in willingly, just as I knew they eventually would. They simply walked off the edge, hand in hand, and went into the eternal peace together. My aging joints ached as I knelt in the stiff grass. I felt each blade under my finger, but it didn't quite register. The pit wanted me to reach in to scoop it up and drink it like water, but it didn't. I looked into its emptiness, its pureness. I took a deep breath in, the pit sending sweetened air into my lungs. I felt myself begin to lean in, to accept its calling. Then I no longer felt the womb-like warmth against my face. It turned cold. The air stagnant around me. It didn't smell like heaven. A gooey, oppressive scent like rotting meat coated my mouth and nostrils. Around me, I hardly recognized the song of the crickets began again, the buzz of the summer cicadas, but I no longer heard my little girls screaming and laughing and playing in the house. I didn't hear my wife, my best friend, humming along to her favorite songs. My house is quiet, but the pit is full. I'm coming to my senses as I write this story. Seeing the words on the page and having to confront them as my fingers move is unbearable. I'm under no illusions now. I know the pit is not holy. I know nothing good can exist down there. I'm ashamed. I have failed, not only as a husband, but as a father. I'm not blind to that fact now. It's such a deep, unearthly shame that I fear I have no choice. My wife is dead. My daughters are dead. My poor, beautiful baby girls. My entire legacy. The purpose of my pathetic life gone because of me. I would throw myself into that pit if I thought it would take me, but whatever waits down there has already had its fill. I know how it works now. It takes what it wants and doesn't want me. I think I'm gonna hang myself tonight. I wonder if I'll sigh when I die. My boss gave me one rule as a 911 dispatcher. If a call comes from the old house on the county line, you let it ring. Last night, I answered. I've been a 911 dispatcher for 12 years, the last 7 on the graveyard shift. You think you heard it all after that long. The drunks, the domestics, the panicking fumbling of words after a car crash. It all becomes a kind of white noise, a rhythm of human misery you learn to navigate without letting it touch you. You have to. It's the only way to stay sane. My district is a sprawling, sleepy county that dies after 10 p.m. It's mostly soccer moms and retirees. The worst we usually get on a weekend is a noise complaint or a teenager who has too much to drink at a bonfire. The job, for me, had become a cycle of caffeine, fluorescent lights, and the low, constant hum of several computers. I was burned out, deeply, existentially tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. The calls were just blips on a screen, voices to be processed, categorized, and dispatched. I was a human switchboard for other people's worst days. The first call came on Tuesday, about 3 months ago. It was 2:47 a.m., the deadest hour of the deadest night. The line lit up on my console, but not in a usual way. It wasn't a cell call with a GPS ping or a landline with a registered address. It was just a raw signal, designated as unregistered VoIP. Not unheard of, but rare. I clicked it open.
911, what's your emergency?
Static. A thick, wet sound, like listening to the radio underwater. It crackled and popped, and underneath it I could barely make out a sound. A whisper.
Hello? Can you hear me?
It was a child's voice. A boy, I thought, maybe 7 or 8. He sounded like he was trying to talk without moving his lips.
This is 911,
I repeated, my voice a little louder, a little clearer.
I can barely hear you. What is your emergency?
The static swelled, almost swallowing his voice whole.
He's back. The tall man in the mask is back.
A chill, cold and sharp, went down my spine. It was a professional chill, the one that tells you this is real. This isn't a prank.
Okay, son, where are you? I need an address.
Hurting mommy.
The whisper came back again, breaking with a sob. The static sounded like a swarm of angry insects now.
Daddy's asleep on the floor. He won't wake up.
Son, I need you to tell me where you are. I can't send help if I don't know where you are.
My fingers are flying across the keyboard, trying to get a trace, but the system was kicking back errors. No location data, no subscriber info, nothing.
The old house.
He whispered, his voice fading.
At the end of the road, please.
Then the line went dead. Not a click, not a hang-up. It just ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a line of static and terror, and the next it was just a dead channel. Even without an address, the old house at the end of the road was enough. There's a long, unpaved road that just sort of peters out into the woods, and at the end of it, there's one house, a big, derelict Victorian thing that's been empty for as long as anyone can remember. It was a local legend, the kind of place kids dared each other to spend nights in. I dispatched a police car. My senior officer, a guy who's been on the force since before I was born, came back over the radio about 15 minutes later. His voice was flat, laced with the kind of annoyance reserved for rookies and time wasters. Dispatch car 12 here. The property is secure. No signs of forced entry. Place is boarded up tighter than a drum. There's nobody here. There hasn't been for like 50 years by the looks of it.
10-4, car 12.
I say, my own voice betraying none of my confusion.
Are you sure? The caller was a child. He said his family was being attacked.
There was a sigh over the radio. Listen, the dust on the porch is an inch thick. The boards on the windows are gray and rotted. If someone is in there, they're a ghost. We're clearing the call. Tell whoever's playing games to just knock it off. I logged it as unfounded and tried to put it in the back of my mind. A prank. A sophisticated one. Maybe using some kind of voice changer in a VoIP spoofer. Kids these days. I was too tired to care. A week later, at 2:47 a.m., the same line lit up. The same static, the same terrified, whispering voice.
He's in the house. I can hear him walking.
This time, I felt a knot of ice form in my stomach.
Son, is this the same caller from last week?
A choked sob.
He has the mask on. The one with the scary smile. Mommy's screaming.
Frantically, through the storm of static, I could hear it. A woman's scream, high and thin and distorted, like a sound being played backwards.
I'm sending help,
I said, my voice tight.
Stay on the line with me. Can you hide?
I'm in the closet.
He whispered.
He's coming up the stairs. I can hear his feet.
The line went dead. I dispatched 2 cars this time. I told them it was a repeat call, probably a hostage situation. I didn't want them to be complacent. They took it seriously. They set up a perimeter, they used a bullhorn, they broke down the front door. The result was the same. An empty house. Thick, undisturbed layers of dust on every surface. Rotting floorboards, peeling wallpaper, the smell of decay and forgotten things. No footprints, no child, no man in the mask. No sign that a human being had set foot in that house in decades. My supervisor pulled me aside the next morning. He's a large, patient man who has the wary look of someone who's seen it all twice. He told me to drop it.
It's a glitch. he said, not meeting my eye. Some kind of cross chatter from another jurisdiction, or a reoccurring electronic echo. Don't waste county resources on it. If that call comes in again, log it and move on. But I couldn't. The boy's voice, it was too real. The terror in it was primal. You can't fake that. Not even the best actor in the world can fake the sound of a child who thinks his mother is being murdered in the next room. The calls kept coming, every Tuesday, like clockwork, 2:47 a.m. Each call was a slightly different piece of the same horrible puzzle.
He's hurting Daddy now. There's so much red. Mommy stopped screaming. He's looking for me. I can hear him opening doors.
Every time I sent a car, every time the result was the same. The cops got angrier. I was the boy who cried wolf. My supervisor gave me a formal warning. My colleagues started looking at me funny, whispering when I walked by. They thought I was cracking up. Maybe I was. I started losing sleep. On my nights off, I'd find myself staring at the clock, my heart pounding as 2:47 a.m. approached. The silence was somehow worse than the calls. I became obsessed during the day. Instead of sleeping, I went to the county record office. I needed to know who owned that house. The paper trail was a mess. It had been sold and resold, owned by banks and holding companies, but I kept digging backwards, through dusty ledgers and brittle property deeds. Finally, I found it. The last family to actually live there. A deed from 1968. A nice, happy family, with a mom, a dad, and 2 kids, the boy and the girl. That wasn't enough. I started spending my days in the library's basement, scrolling through decades of local newspaper on an ancient microfiche reader. The stale, papery smell of the archives filled my lungs. I was looking for anything related to the house, to that family. For weeks, I found nothing, just property tax notices and school honor rolls. And then I found it. An article from a cold late autumn day in 1975. The headline was stark: "Local family slain in apparent home invasion." My blood ran cold. I zoomed in, my hands trembling as I adjusted the focus knob. The picture was grainy, black and white. It was the house. The same steep gables, the same wide porch. Police cars were parked haphazardly on the overgrown lawn. I read the article, my heart hammering against my ribs. A husband, a wife, and their 10-year-old daughter found dead in their home. The cause of death was extensive. The article was vague, using phrases like brutal force trauma. The police report mentioned a possible intruder, a figure a neighbor had seen fleeing into the woods, described only as a tall man wearing some kind of pale, expressionless mask. But the last paragraph was what made me stop breathing. The family's 8-year-old son, it read, remains missing. Police found evidence he was hiding in an upstairs closet during the attack, but the boy has not been found. A statewide search is underway. Authorities have not ruled out the possibility that he was abducted by the assailant. The crime was never solved. The maskless man was never found. The little boy was never seen again. I sat back in my chair, the library's basement suddenly feeling like a tomb. The static, the whispers, the closet, the man in the mask. It wasn't a prank, it wasn't a glitch. Was I listening to a ghost? The next day at work, I felt broken. I walked into the dispatch center like a zombie. The hum of the server sounded like a funeral dirge. I couldn't keep it in anymore. I had to tell somebody. I grabbed my supervisor and one of the oldest dispatchers, a woman who had been there for 30 years, and I dragged him into the break room. I laid it all out. The calls, the timing, the empty house, the microphage articles. I showed them the copy I'd printed out, the grainy picture of the house, the headline. I expected them to think I was crazy. I expected them to tell me to take a leave of absence. They didn't. They just looked at each other. It was a look I'd never seen before, of a grim, tired registration. My supervisor sighed, a heavy, rattling sound, and rubbed his temples. The older dispatcher, she just stared at the articles, her face pale. "So, it started again," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "What do you mean? It started again?"
I asked, my voice shaking.
What's going on?
My supervisor sat down, heavily.
Kid,
He said, and he looked 100 years old.
we need to tell you about the man you replaced.
He told me the story, the dispatcher who had sat in my seat before me. He'd been a good man, sharp, dedicated. But a year before I was hired, he started getting strange. He was obsessed with a specific address, the old house at the end of the road. He kept sending cars out there, insisting there was a child in trouble. The patrols always came back empty. He started pulling old files, spending his days off in the library. He became withdrawn, paranoid. He claimed he was getting calls no one else could hear.
We checked the logs,
My supervisor said, his voice low and serious.
The system never registered the calls he said he was taking. We pulled the audio recorders from his console. There was nothing on them but dead air. We thought he was having a breakdown, stress of the job.
My blood turned to ice water.
This system, it doesn't log the calls for me either. They just show up on the screen and then disappear. They don't go into call history.
The older dispatcher nodded slowly.
We know. It's the same. He told us what the calls were about. A little boy. A man in a mask.
I felt like I was going to be sick.
What happened to him?
I whispered, though I already knew the answer.
One night,
The supervisor continued, his eyes fixed on the linoleum floor.
he took a call. We saw him on the console, talking, his face ashen. He was typing a report, then he just stopped. He stood up, grabbed his jacket and his keys, and walked out without a word. The call was still active on his screen, but none of us could hear anything on it. We just saw the open line. Where did he go? He drove out to the house. His car was found parked on the road the next morning. Engine was cold, doors were locked. He was gone.
The silence in the room was absolute.
We searched,
The old dispatcher said, her voice cracking.
The police did a grid search of the entire woods. Dogs, helicopters, the whole 9 yards. They went through that house from the attic to the cellar. Found nothing. No sign of struggle, no footprints, no him. He just vanished. Wiped off the face of the earth.
I stared at them, my mind struggling to process what they were telling me.
Why didn't you warn me?
I stammered.
How could we?
My supervisor shot back, his voice rising with a frustration that had clearly been festering for years.
Hey, new guy, welcome aboard. By the way, this console might be haunted and the last guy who sat here disappeared. Don't worry about it. We thought he was crazy. Until you came in here today and with the same damn story.
He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto mine.
This is what you're gonna do. The next time that line rings, you do not answer it. If you answer it by mistake, you hang up immediately. You do not talk to him. You do not engage, you terminate the call, and you clear that line. That is an order. Do you understand me?
For the next few weeks, I was a ghost myself. I did my job on autopilot. Every sound, every flicker on the screen made me jump. I dreaded Tuesday nights. I drank so much coffee I could feel my heart rattling in my chest, just to stay sharp, to stay diligent. I thought about quitting. I thought about just walking out and never coming back, but where would I go? Then, last night it happened. It was 2:45 a.m. I was just staring at the clock, my knuckles white from gripping the edge of my desk. The minutes ticked by like hours. 2:46. My mouth was dry. My heart was a drum solo in my ears. 2:47. The line lit up. The unregistered VoIP. It felt like a physical blow. I flinched back in my chair. My training, my instincts, every fiber in my being screamed at me to answer it. There was a child in trouble. That was the job. But I remembered the pale, haunted face of my supervisor, the story of the man who had vanished. You terminate the call. I let it ring. Once, twice. The flashing light on the control seemed to sear my retinas. My hand hovered over the button, trembling. I couldn't ignore it. I had to answer. I had to. I clicked the button.
911, what's your...
The static was a roar, louder than it had ever been. It was a physical presence in my ears, the wall of noise, and through it, the boy's screaming voice. The boy's voice came, not whispering this time, but screaming. It was raw, ragged It was raw, ragged sounds of pure agony and terror.
He's got me! He's got me, please! He's taking me, please, sir! Don't let him take me!
The sound ripped through my professional detachment and tore right into my soul. That was him. That was it. The climax. The moment the boy was taken, replaying for all eternity. My hands flew to the keyboard to dispatch a car, a purely reflexive action born of years of training. But I stopped. My fingers froze over the keys. He's gone. This already happened. It's not real. The boy was sobbing now. His scream turned into a choked, gasping plea.
Please. You promised. You said you'd send help. Don't leave me.
I felt tears welling at my eyes. I was a 911 dispatcher. My job was to send help, and I was just gonna sit here and listen to a child be abducted or murdered and do nothing?
I'm sorry.
I whispered, my voice thick.
I'm so sorry.
I reached for the terminate button on my screen. My finger was a millimeter from the glass. This was it. I was choosing to save myself. I was choosing to let him go. And then the screaming stopped. It wasn't a fade out, it was an abrupt cut. As if a switch had been flipped, the roar of the static dropped to a low, sinister hum. The line was still open. Silence. My heart was in my throat. Did I do it? Then a new sound came through the headset. It wasn't the boy. It was a man's voice. A whisper, just as terrified as the child's had been, but older. Hoarse. It was distorted by the same underwater static, the same swarm of electronic insects. It was a voice trying to push its way through an impossible distance, through time itself, and it was a voice I felt deep in my bones. I should have recognized from an old staff photo in the hallway. The whisper was faint, but utterly, terrifyingly clear.
He's here.
I froze, my fingers hovering over the screen. The voice was ragged, desperate, broken.
He sees you. Through the line. He's looking right at you.
A cold dread, so absolute and profound it felt like death itself, washed over me. I slowly, involuntarily looked up from my console, across the darkened dispatch center, towards the plate glass windows that looked out into the night. There was nothing to see there but the reflection of my own terrified face in the glass, my skin pale, in the glow of the monitors. The whispering in my ears continued, a final, chilling plea from a place beyond hope.
Please. Get me out of here.
My father had one rule. We were forbidden from acknowledging my mother. I broke it, and now I understand why. I need to start from the beginning. I need to try and make sense of it, for my own sake. For as long as I could remember, my life has been governed by one unbreakable rule. It was never spoken out loud, never written down, never explained. It was a rule learned through punishing silence, through the sharp, warning glances of my father, through the pressure in the atmosphere so thick you could feel it on your skin. The rule was simple. We do not acknowledge her. She was my mother. She lived in the house with us. She was as solid and real as the dining table we sat at every night, or the stairs I climbed to my bedroom. But to my father, and by extension to me, she was a ghost we agreed not to see. Every morning, she would be in the kitchen when I came down for breakfast. She'd be at the stove, a floral apron tied around her waist, and she would turn and smile at me. It was always a sad smile, one that never quite reached her eyes.
Good morning, sweetheart.
She would say, her soft voice like rustling leaves. And every morning, I would look right through her, my gaze fixed on the coffee pot on the counter behind her. I'd grab a bowl from the cupboard, pour pour my own cereal and sit at the table. My father would already be there, hidden behind his newspaper, a silent monolith. She would sigh, a tiny, deflated sound, place a third plate on the table between us, a plate of scrambled eggs or pancakes. Always cooked perfectly, always destined to grow cold. We would eat our breakfast in silence, the only sounds the scrape of the spoon against ceramic and the rustle of my father's paper. The third plate sat there, a testament to our collective delusion, a steaming fragment accusation. She would sit in her chair, her hands clasped in her lap, watching us eat, a hopeful, desperate look on her face. Sometimes she would try to start conversation.
"It looks like it might rain today,"
she'd offer, her voice wavering slightly.
"You should take an umbrella to school."
My father would just turn a page, the crinkle of the newsprint sharp and dismissive in the quiet room. I would take a large, noisy bite of my cereal, focusing on the crunch, on anything but the sound of her voice. After a while, she would just fall silent, the hope draining from her face, leaving behind that familiar, deep-seated sadness. Dinner was the same. She'd cook a full meal, something that smelled incredible, filling the house with the scent of roast chicken or baking bread. She'd set 3 places at the table, complete with napkins and silverware. My father and I would sit, and she would serve us, placing food on our plates, her movements graceful and practiced. Then she would sit down, fill her own plate, and try to engage us.
"How was your day at work?"
she would ask my father. He would grunt, his attention fixed on cutting his meat into precise geometric shapes.
"In school, did you have that big test today?"
she would ask me. I would mumble something, non-committal, my eyes glued to my plate, shoveling food into my mouth to avoid having to speak. The charade was suffocating. It was a constant, exhausting performance. Every single day was a rehearsal and a live show of pretending this woman, my own mother, did not exist. I grew up in a house with 3 people, but I was raised in a world that only acknowledged 2. For years, I just accepted it. Kids accept the most bizarre circumstances as normal because it's all they've ever known. The sun rises, the sky is blue. We don't talk about mom. It was just a fact of life. I learned to tune her out, to blur her from the edges of my vision. She became a piece of the background, like a painting in the wall you no longer notice. But as I got older, moving into my late teens and then my early 20s, the acceptance began to curdle into something else. First it was confusion, then a deep, gnawing guilt. I started to really look at her. I saw the fine lines of sorrow etched around her eyes. I saw the way her shoulders slumped when we ignored her, the way she would sometimes touch the back of my father's chair as she passed, a longing for contact that was never returned. I found a woman who was profoundly, devastatingly lonely, trapped in her own home. My perception of my father shifted too. The silent, stoic man I had once seen as a protector started to look like a tyrant. His rules was strange, cruel. It was a calculated daily act of emotional violence. What had she done to deserve this? Had she had an affair? Had she done something unforgivable that I was too young to remember? Whatever it was, this punishment seemed monstrously out of proportion. It was a cold, quiet form of torture, and he had made me his compliance. The resentment built slowly, the pressure behind my ribs. I started having trouble sleeping. I'd lie in bed and hear the faint sounds of her weeping from their bedroom. It was a soft, muffled sound, the kind of crying you do when you're trying not to wake anyone, and it broke my heart. How could my father lie beside her every night, hear that, and do nothing? What kind of man was he? I began to see his action as a grotesque form of misogyny, an exertion of absolute control. He had erased her. He'd stripped her of her voice, her presence, her very existence within the family she had built, and I helped him. Every silent breakfast, every ignored question, I was tightening the screws. The breaking point came last Tuesday. It was a miserable, rainy day, the kind that makes the whole world feel gray and damp. I was in the living room, trying to read, but the words just swam on the page. She came in and stood by the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. She wasn't trying to talk to me. She was just standing there, looking out at the world she was a part of but couldn't seem to touch. She started humming, a simple, sad little lullaby. It was a melody that felt vaguely familiar, like a half-remembered dream. I felt a lump form in my throat. I watched her reflection in the dark window pane, translucent figure against the storm-tossed trees outside. Her shoulders were shaking almost imperceptibly. She was crying again, silently. Something inside me snapped. Years of pent-up guilt, of quiet rebellion, of love for this woman I wasn't allowed to know. All of it came rushing to the surface. It was wrong. The whole thing, this whole life, was fundamentally, grotesquely wrong. I couldn't be a part of it anymore. I waited. I waited until I heard my father's car pull out of the driveway for his early trip to the hardware store. It was a ritual for him. Every Tuesday morning, a couple of hours to himself, the house fell into a new kind of silence, one that wasn't enforced, but was simply empty. Except it wasn't empty. She was still there. I found her in the kitchen, washing the dinner dishes, her back to me. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I felt like she must have been able to hear it. My mouth was dry. It felt like I was about to break a law of physics, like the universe itself might fracture if I spoke. I took a deep breath.
Mom?
The words felt alien in my mouth, heavy and clumsy. She froze. Her hands submerged in the soapy water, went completely still. The silence that followed was more profound than any I had ever experienced in that house. It stretched for what felt like an eternity. Slowly, she turned around. Her face was a mask of disbelief. Her eyes, wide and glistening with tears, were locked on mine. She looked at me as if she were seeing a miracle. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She just stared, her expression shifting from shock to a dawning, radiant joy that was so pure it was painful to watch.
You can see me?
She whispered, her voice choked with emotion. A single tear traced a path down her cheek.
Oh, my sweet boy, you can finally see me.
Her words confused me. They landed strangely, not quite fitting the situation. I took a step closer.
What are you talking about?
I say, my own voice unsteady.
I've always seen you. I see you every day.
Her brow furrowed in confusion, but the smile didn't leave her face. It was as if she couldn't bear to let it go.
But you never looked at me. You never spoke.
Dad, I said, the words tasting like poison.
It was him. He told me not to. It was his rule. I was a kid. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. But I'm not a kid anymore. And it's wrong. What he's doing to you is wrong.
Understanding washed over her face, followed by a shadow of that old sadness. She reached out and took my hand. Her skin was cold, surprisingly so, like marble that had been left in a cellar, but her grip was firm, real.
Your father,
she began, her voice trailing off. She shook her head.
He's had a hard time. He does what he thinks is best, but it's okay now. It's okay. This can be our secret. Can't it? Just between us?
I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. The relief that flooded me was immense, like I'd been holding my breath my entire life and had finally been allowed to exhale. We stood there for a long time, just holding hands in the quiet kitchen. She told me how much she loved me, how she had watched me grow up, proud of the man I was becoming. She asked me about school, about my friends, about my life. It was a torrent of questions, years of unspoken love and curiosity pouring out of her. We talked until we heard the sound of my father's car on the gravel driveway. A sudden panic seized us. She squeezed my hand one last time, a conspiratorial smile on her face.
Our secret,
she whispered, and then she turned back to the sink, resuming her washing as if nothing had happened. I bolted from the kitchen, my heart racing, and made it to my room just as the front door opened. The rest of the evening passed in the usual suffocating silence, but this time it felt different. It was charged with my secret. When she looked at me across the dining table, there was a new light in her eyes, a shared, knowledge. It was the first time in my life I felt like I had an ally in that house. We continued our secret conversations for the next few days. Whenever my father was out, we would talk. I learned about her favorite books, the music she loved, the places she dreamt of traveling. She was vibrant, intelligent, and funny. She was a whole person, a person my father had tried to bury. And with every word we shared, I felt like I was helping her claw her way out of the grave he dug for her. My anger at him grew with every passing day. He was a monster, a quiet, methodical monster who had stolen my mother from me. I started to think about what to do. Should I confront him? Should I just take her and leave? I felt a fierce, protective instinct I'd never known before. I would not let him hurt her anymore. Then came yesterday morning. I woke up and the house was silent. Too silent. There was no smell of coffee brewing, no sound of my father's radio murmuring the morning news from the kitchen. I lay in bed for a while, waiting, but the silence stretched, became unnatural, unnerving. I finally got up and went downstairs. The kitchen was empty. The coffee pot was cold. The newspaper was still on the front porch. A prickle of unease ran down my spine. I checked the whole ground floor. No one. I went upstairs and knocked on their bedroom door. No answer. I pushed it open. The room was empty. The bed was neatly made. My father's side of the closet was open, his clothes hanging in their usual meticulous rows. Her side was the same. Nothing seemed out of place, yet the absence of them was a screaming void. Panic started to set in. I checked the garage. His car was gone. My first thought was that he left for work early, but he never did that without telling me. And where was she? Didn't he take her somewhere? The thought sent a jolt of fear through me. Had he found out about our secret? I spent the whole day in a state of escalating anxiety. I called my father's cell phone a dozen times. I went straight to voicemail every time. I called his office. His secretary said he hadn't showed up, which had never happened before. I didn't know who to call about her. She didn't have a cell phone. She didn't have any friends that I knew of. Her entire world was contained within the walls of our home. By evening, I was frantic. I paced the empty rooms, the silence of the house pressing in on me. Had he hurt her? Had he taken her away to punish me? The darkest possibilities began to spiral in my mind. I had to do something. I had to find a clue, anything that could tell me where they went. My search led me back to their bedroom. It felt like a violation to be in there, to go through their things, but I was desperate. I looked through drawers under the bed, in the closet, nothing. It was just a room, unnaturally tidy and impersonal. Then I saw it. On the floor of my father's closet, tucked behind a row of small shoes, a small wooden chest. I'd never seen it before. It was unlocked, my hands trembling as I lifted the lid. Inside were journals, a stack of them, all identical black, leather-bound notebooks, the kind my father used for work. I pulled out the one on top. His neat, precise handwriting filled the page. The first entry was dated over 15 years ago. I sat on the edge of their bed, the scent of his cologne still faint on the pillows. Then I began to read. It's been a year since the accident. The house feels so empty, a hollowed-out shell. I look at my son, and I see his eyes, and the pain is so fresh, like it happened yesterday. He's only 3, too young to understand. He just asked for Mama. How do I explain to a 3-year-old that she's never coming back? The police report called it a freak accident, a downed power line in the storm. Wrong place, wrong time. It doesn't feel like a freak accident. It feels like a thief. The world has stolen her from us. My blood ran cold. I read the entry again, and then a third time. An accident? She died? No, it was impossible. I'd just spoken to her yesterday. I had held her hand. It was a mistake, a different journal, something. But it was his handwriting. His room. I kept reading, a sense of dread coiling in my stomach. May 3rd, 2 years later. He did it again. He was playing in the living room with his blocks, and he just stopped and pointed towards the kitchen. He said, Mama is making cookies. I went in, of course. The kitchen was empty. I told him Mama was in heaven, like we'd practice. He just shook his head. No, she's right there, he said, and he described her. He described the yellow dress she was buried in. I felt a coldness spread through me, that had nothing to do with the temperature in the room. He's 5. His imagination is running wild. That's all it is. May 28th. It's not his imagination. He talks to her every day now. I've started to see glimpses. A flicker of movement in the corner of my eye when he says she's walking past. A faint scent of her perfume in a room she supposedly just left. This morning, I was in the hall, and he was in his room chattering away. I asked who he was talking to. "Mama," he said. "She's singing me a song." And then I heard it. Faintly through the door, a lullaby, the one she used to sing to him. I almost threw up. June 15th. I confronted it today. My son was sitting on the sofa, talking to the empty space next to him. I stood in the doorway, and I said her name. I asked her what she wanted. My son looked at me, his eyes wide with fear, and the air in the room grew heavy, cold, a presence built against my eardrums. I felt a sense of malevolence, of pure hatred directed at me. It looked like her, it sounded like her, but when I forced myself to look at the spot my son was staring at, I saw it. Just for a second, the shape of her was there, but the eyes were black pits, empty and ancient and wrong. This thing is not my wife. My wife is gone. This is something else, a parasite wearing her memory. My breath hitched in my chest. I felt a wave of nausea. This was insane. He was insane. He was grieving. He had gone mad. That had to be it. I gripped the journal tighter, my knuckles white. July 1st. I've tried everything. Priests, mediums, paranormal investigators. They either think I'm crazy or they just leave the house pale and shaken, telling me they can't help. One of them told me it's a mimic, a shade. He said it's drawn to the grief to my son's energy and it seems to never leave us. Even if we left this place, it'll just follow. He says the worst thing we can do is give it what it wants. Acknowledgement. Attention is sustenance. Recollection is power. If we feed it, it will grow stronger. It will latch onto him. It will consume him. So I have a plan. It's a terrible, cruel plan. It will make my son hate me. It will make me a monster in his eyes, but it's the only way I can think of to protect him. We have to starve it. We have to pretend it isn't there. We have to cut off its food supply. We have to not look at it. We will not speak to it. We will not acknowledge its existence. We will live in a house with a ghost and pretend we are alone. May God forgive me for what I'm about to do to my own child. The journal fell from my hands, landing with a soft thud on the carpet. The room was spinning. Every memory of my childhood, every silent dinner, every sharp glance from my father, it all rearranged itself in my mind into a new and terrifying picture. I scrambled for the last journal, the one from this year. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely turn the pages. I found an entry from last week, Tuesday. He spoke to it tonight. I knew it was coming. I've seen the way he's been looking at it lately, the guilt in his eyes. He thinks I'm a villain. I suppose I am. I would rather he hate me and be safe than love me and be lost. But now he's broken the rule. He's opened the door. When I came home, the air in the house was different, thicker, charged. And it looked stronger, more solid. The sadness in its eyes had been replaced by something else. Triumph. I have to end this. The old man, the one who called it a mimic, he gave me a final option, a last resort. He said if it ever got a true foothold, if it ever fed enough to become fully anchored here, it was a ritual, a way to bind it, but it required a sacrifice, a trade, an anchor for an anchor. He told me it would probably kill me, but what life have I been living anyway? A jailer in my own home, hated by my own son. If this is the price to set him free, I will pay it. He's talking to it again. I can hear them whispering in the kitchen. I love you, my son. And I hope one day you'll understand. I hope you'll forgive me. That was the last entry. So, his disappearance and his car being gone, he went to perform the ritual, to sacrifice himself, to save me from the thing he said it took my mother from. My blood turned into ice water. I thought of her hand in mine, how cold her skin was, the thought of her words,
You can finally see me.
as if my sight was something to be earned. I thought of her triumphant eyes across the dinner table, and then I heard it. A soft, sweet sound from the bottom of the stairs, humming that strange little tune she was humming by the window. A floorboard creaked in the hall downstairs, then another. I scrambled off the bed, my body acting on pure instinct, and threw the lock on the bedroom door. The click sound definitely loud in the silence. I backed away from the door, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. My eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape that wasn't there. The window was 2 stories up. Her footsteps were on the stairs now, slow, deliberate. Not the light, almost soundless way she used to move. These steps had weight. They had substance. She was stronger now. I had made her stronger. The humming stopped right outside the door.
Sweetheart?
Her voice. It was my mother's voice, but it was different. It was coated in a thick, cloying sweetness that made my skin crawl.
Are you in there? I was so worried. I woke up and the house was empty.
I pressed myself against the far wall, my hands over my mouth to stifle my own ragged breathing.
I talked to your father.
She called through the door. The sound was so clear, it was like she was standing right next to me.
He called. He's so sorry, honey, for everything. He explained it all. He knows he was wrong to keep us apart.
My mind screamed, "Liar, liar, he's gone. You know he's gone."
He said he just needs a few days to clear his head,
The sweet voice continued.
but he gave us his blessing. He wants us to finally have time together. Just you and me. Isn't that wonderful?
Silence. I held my breath, praying she wouldn't think I was here, that she would just go away.
I know you're in there, honey. I can feel you.
She cooed.
Come on. Open the door. I'm gonna make you some pancakes just like I used to.
She never used to make me pancakes.
Please, son. Don't shut me out again. Not after you finally let me in. It's all going to be okay now. I'm here. I'll take care of you. We'll be a proper family.
The words hung in the air, thick and venomous. A silence followed, stretching for a few agonizing heartbeats. Then a new sound, a soft metallic scrape. The doorknob began to jiggle, slowly at first, then with more force. Click, rattle, click. My breath caught in my throat. I was trying to get in. It was physically trying to reach me. I backed away. Until my shoulders hit the cold wall, my eyes wide and fixed on the trembling brass knob. The wood against the lock groaned under the pressure. My phone was in my pocket. The weight of it was all sudden, desperate comfort. My hands were slick with sweat as I fumbled to pull it out. My thumb hovered over the emergency call button. What could I possibly say? There's a woman in my house who looked and sounded like my mother. My dad's journal says she died 15 years ago, and this thing is a mimic that feeds on attention. They would send an ambulance with a straitjacket, not a squad car with armed officers. The rattling stopped. For a moment, there was nothing. A profound, terrifying quiet. And then a new sound began. A soft, rhythmic scratching on the other side of the door, like long fingernails dragging slowly, deliberately down the grain of the wood. Scrape, scrape. Over and over, a sound that was patient and positive. That was it. I didn't care how crazy I sounded. I stabbed the call button. A calm voice answered.
911, what's your emergency?
I cussed my hand over the phone speaker, my own voice, a choked, ragged whisper. There's an intruder in my house. I'm locked in my bedroom upstairs.
Can you describe them, sir?
Dispatcher asked, her voice perfectly level. The scratching continued, a counterpoint to her professional calm. I can't. I haven't seen them. I just hear them. They're right outside my door. Please, you have to hurry. There was a frantic pause on the other end.
A unit is on its way, sir. Can you stay on the line with me?
No, I whispered, my eyes locked on the door. I can't make any noise. I ended the call before she could protest. The scratching stopped the instant the call disconnected, as if it heard, as if it knew. The silence that rushed back in was somehow heavier, more menacing than before. It's waiting. It knows I've called for help. It knows its time might be limited. Or maybe it's just enjoying this. I'm trapped in this room. I've called the police, and I don't know if they can even do anything. I don't know what they'll find when they arrive. What if it's just gone when they get here? They'll find my dad's journals, they'll see the state I'm in, and they'll think I'm the one who's broken. But all I can do is wait for them. I'm writing this down, getting it all out as fast as I can on my phone. I need someone to know the truth. I need you to know what really happened, in case they don't believe me, in case something bad happens to me before they get here. Today's story has a not safe for work tag. Listener discretion is advised.
All tucked in for the night, handsome? House to yourself? Private browser at the ready? A hot and steamy menu of delinquent college girls waiting for your strong touch? But what's that, my king? 18 is too old for you? I get it. You want to see some pigtails tugged, some Hello Kitty shorts at the ankles. Well, why didn't you say so? I have just the place. Indulge your fine, like-mind cravings at Yellow King's, the most exquisite site for all of your oh-so-special needs. We don't judge, we don't ask. We only show you exactly what you've been too afraid to peek at. Just don't tell anyone what you're watching. It would drive them mad.
That was the first version of the ad I ever saw, a neat little autoplay window wedged between my feed. I had convinced myself I'd misread it, a bit of smutty bait, until I realized the words were no trick. They'd gotten brave. A disgusting corner of the dark web, we'd thought was a mirror, began making its rounds everywhere, shining advertisements and teenage-edited trends that were scrubbed clean, but never fast enough. People noticed, people saw, and it spread like wildfire, even making the news and morning shows before fizzing into obscurity, murmured in only a select few circles until it reared its ugly head again and again. Confident, untouchable, no amount of disappearing links or banned accounts could stop it, not forever. And for most people, it remained nothing more than an occasional viral hiccup. But for us, it was a bulbous beast that lurched carefree through the web, slapping its fat ass to boiling wolves below that had been sniffing its scent for months. Every lead would disintegrate in our hands. Servers went dark. Burner accounts snuffed out. Payment trails shriveled. One step ahead. Then, by some miracle, those wolves found a tiny crack in the foundation and, with vigor and teeth, wrenched and tore until they had the neck of a squealing, slimy, pathetic thing in their clutches. His name was Lenny, and that poor freak shit himself when the door to his apartment exploded and we barged into his musky, spunk-coated abode of sweat and intimacy, a renegade who had dedicated his mid-30s to pursuing swimming pool changing rooms from the sanctuary of a camera he believed no one could touch him through. My cross teetered on becoming a yoke. I cannot recount the heresy that adorned his computers, not for the lack of remembering, merely a diligent mercy. But I can recall the color that festered his home, a sickly, artificial glow like that of nicotine-stained bulbs, split from every screen to tighten the walls and paste the air. It was not a clean, bright yellow, but a dirty, jaundiced hue that clung to every greasy keyboard, staining the horrid den into a hazy swamp. It ached to my eyes if they lingered too long. Lenny's eyes must have longed to them for years, too wide and dry, rimmed red and veiny from endless, unblinking stares at the screens. His movements were jerky and unfocused, expedited by our raid. Sweat drenched his very being, his hair clotted, his breathing quick and shallow, and when he spoke, his words would tumble out in cracked bursts as some on-screen delight snagged his attention away. It only worsened as we pulled the plugs, damning his home into murky darkness where the feverish shine in his gaze erupted into fire, as if we'd trigger an autonomous, hostile response. Despite his frailness, he overpowered the officer restraining him, clawing into him like a rabid cat and reaching for the pistol he had stashed under his mattress. A single gunshot went off, and Lenny reeled back, screaming in pain at the clean hole I'd blasted through his hand. Then another rifle smacked the side of his worming head to shut him up.
Holy shit, you good?
I asked the recovering officer, pawing at the scratches across his face.
I would have aimed for his neck.
When Lenny came to, the comfort of his bedroom was replaced with 4 blank walls, painted the same shade as the den we bagged him from. I watched a flash of recognition and soulless blitz across his wrinkled face until his senses returned and he realized his fate. A rat, smelling the needle. He tried to move, discovered he couldn't. We hadn't bothered with visible ties, opting instead for a cocktail the Tex had cooked that jittered and locked his muscles across the spine of the lounge chair. His hands twitched limp at his sides, his mouth slurring and drooling like post-lobotomy, enough to keep him from getting up, not enough to let him sleep. The luxury of passing out is not one we would bless. He eventually spotted me, sitting on the table, my rifle still slung over my shoulder. His bloodied, bandaged hand recoiled at the sight.
I think he recognizes you, Cal,"
another voice said, closer to the door, adjusting the recording camera mounted atop a tripod.
"Does your dog know he's awake?"
I asked Jane, dressed more for a fishing trip than an interrogation. Jane shifted her sunglasses, eyeing Lenny up and down as he soiled his tracksuit.
"Oh, yeah, he knows."
Lenny's bumbling, frightened mouth attempted to utter a sentence.
"Where? Who?"
Jane cut him off with soothing shushes, stepping towards the man with a gentle, raised palm.
Shh. You're safe, Leonard. Save your energy for our questions. Yeah?
At first, Lenny nodded sheepishly, but then the weight of potential questions quickly dawned on him, like an ill tide.
Wait. No, I didn't. I didn't look. I only...
Shh. Lenny. It's okay. We know. Jane rested a kind hand on his slick shoulder. Jenny looked at me with pleading desperation.
The fuck you want me to do?
Jane continued, as if consolidating a misbehaved toddler.
We're not interested in what you watched, but we want to know what you sent, to whom, and to where. Do you understand? They'll know. We got some of your buddies, too. Your door wasn't the only one broken this morning, but unlike them, you're special.
Jane lied, squatting down, patting his knee.
I'm talking to you first. That's a gift, one I hope that you'll return. And in exchange, we can soften the blows a bit. Does that sound nice?
She winked, and I think maybe Lenny could have understood her mist and swirling mind of substances. The door opened and a tall man entered, gray-haired, battered, looking as if he just waltzed from a war zone. He carried a keg of water in one hand, a cylinder of compressed air in the other. Immediately, Jane backstepped to the wall, giving him the room as he strode towards Lenny with not a word, nor a lick of attention towards me. He squirmed in his chair as the man reached him, kicking his legs apart, planting himself over his thigh and pressing his entire body into the space without moderation.
"What's the matter?"
he asked dryly, slowly adjusting his belt buckle that cut into Lenny's grunting cheek.
"Don't like your boys this close?" Please, I'll leave it to you, Jack,"
I said, bounding off the table and making a quick exit. Jane gave me a wave, a smile, a little nod as I neared the door.
"If you wouldn't mind,"
she said softly, and I obliged, flicking a switch on the camera to dead its red eye, before stepping out of the soundproof chamber, closing the door behind me with a timid click. I rolled the stiffness of my shoulder as my hand drifted to the cross at my throat, and stopped. It almost felt wrong to touch it, with the stink of Lenny's home still molding on my skin. Footsteps slapped somewhere down the concrete tunnel, quick and light, out of sync with the pace of the complex. I turned the corner and found a hooded shape some distance away, under faulty strip lighting, hugging a laptop to her chest like body armor.
Damn it. "Hannah!"
I called. She flinched, then spotted me and relaxed,
Her eyes were ringed with dark half-moons like she hadn't seen daylight in months.
There you are, she said, breath fogging in the air. I've been looking for you.
Of course she had. Ghosts don't sleep. They just haunt new halls.
Wrong floor, IT kid,
I said, falling swiftly into step beside her.
You got lost? No, I just followed the shouting,
she replied.
Leads to you every time.
Up close, she always looked younger than she sounded on comms. 20-something, baggy hoodie hanging off a narrow frame, fingers chewed down. The kind of kid that should be kept in a clean office.
You shouldn't be down here,
I muttered.
Not with Jack about. Relax, I'm not going in there.
She gestured back towards where we came.
I just need you upstairs in the briefing room. 4?
She glanced up at me, something expectedly raw raging in her eyes.
Ending this.
The room we'd chosen wasn't big enough for the cancer it grew, manifesting as a sprawling wall of printouts and mugshots that only had made sense to the unfortunate enough to study it. Handwritten dates and usernames, chat logs, blurred screenshots from live feed, every image from Yellow Kings that legal would let us pin, smudged into anonymity. But some shapes could still be identified, some bodies and decorated film sets, from recreational schools to whimsical castles, pixelated or redacted so heavily their identities were rendered a captionated blank square. One blurred youth in a paper crown stared back at us. The birthday boy was scrawled underneath in someone's weak hand, his small, pale shoulders hunched over a supermarket cake. Something tightened behind my eyes and broke in my chest upon seeing their latest lamb, again, only known to us for a few days.
Close the door,
Hannah said quietly, stepping past me. She moved to the central table, dropped her laptop, flipping it open with practiced violence. The screen's blue glow cut a brutal gash through the room's gloom, painting her face in cold light. She tapped a rapid pattern across the keys, windows blurred past too quickly to read. Access banners screamed and died in a heartbeat, and a myriad of red flags dwindled in and out of existence.
Hannah, boss asked for results.
Her voice snapped, sharper than I'd ever heard it.
Not another report.
She stopped typing and briefly looked up at the case wall.
You want to stare at them forever? Or do you want to start taking them down?
The pain behind her eyes intensified. The wall seemed to swirl at the edges, as if the faces were trying to unveil themselves, begging to look back, to be seen, to be known.
What have you found?
I asked quickly, peeling my eyes away. She spun the laptop towards me. A satellite image filled the screen, gray and green mountains, a thick road snaking up through dark woodlands to a pale smear of architecture clinging to the hillside. Caracasa Wellness Retreat. Expensive, isolated, smug.
On paper,
Hannah said, voice flat,
it's a luxury clinic where rich people pretend to be broken.
She tapped a key, and the brochure view faded, replaced by new layers. Thermal overlays, altered floor plans, and evacuation cuts that rivaled our own. The building's guts unfolded in phantasmic lines. 3 clean, legal stories above ground, and then a true body plugging into the rock. Level after level after level. Again, the darkness of the deepest cut. A hot, pulsing blotch of orange and red flared like an ember lodged in bone. A server farm. It had to be.
Off paper?
I asked. Her fingers traced the glowing mass.
Everything we've tried to track, every dead link, every fried server with their grubby mitts on it, they all point here. And I imagine your pig downstairs does too.
She drew a shaky breath.
They will keep serving their own arteries to hide their hearts.
She tapped the screen.
Yes, there it is. Right there. How long for a warrant?
I asked, even though some part of me already knew the answer.
We're not getting one.
The words laced like a verdict, a dust-dry certainty. I stared at her, momentarily, lost for words, then looked at the satellite view again. A white building stared back, pristine, with swimming pools glinting like dead eyes, the surrounding trees forming a dark ring. My head throbbed, too bright.
If you're wrong, I'm not. If you're wrong,
I repeated, forcing the words out.
There is no fixing that. Do you understand?
Hannah's fingers tapped the edge of the laptop, in a low, staccato rhythm. Her glaze slid over the case walls, then faltered to the floor.
I know,
She muttered.
I don't want to look at them anymore. I can't. Cal, can you?
I didn't look, not directly, but my eyes still played with them, finding them in my peripherals, as if they were needles lost to a field of static. My hands went to my cross, and this time it stayed there. Our weight settled atop my shoulders. Anger, obligation, and something worse. Comfort.
We've crossed lines before,
She continued, as if reading my thoughts, trying to twist my arm until my skin burned.
You have. Jane has. Jack definitely has. It's why you're down there, not up here. What's one more? When?
I heard myself ask. She let out a tiny sigh of relief.
Tonight. No record, no books, no chain of command, just the four of us. An MOC, a routine maintenance check, in the system of whoever gets curious later. You go in like a ghost, you drag something out, anything that brings that fucking monster into the light.
A flash of lightning bled pale against the high, bared windows, outlooking the murky city street below. Thunder rolled a second later, a low, distant growl that rattled the frames, and in that brief moment, she looked like the most delirious young woman on earth.
I'll talk to Jane,
I said with a solemn nod.
get it signed off. Plausible deniability.
She closed her laptop with a snap, satisfied, and the room darkened again, smothering the brief clarity her screen had offered. She moved towards the door, but I stopped her with a gentle grip on her arm.
Get some sleep. Please.
Her eyes went wide, uncomfortable, as if it was the first sign of care another soul had shown her in a long, long time.
I will.
And then she was gone, her steps fading down the corridor, leaving me alone with paper faces and a fleeting pounding in my head. I stared at the wall one last time and tried desperately, hopefully, to imagine it coming down, my hands placing names into files marked closed. Not a monastery of everything we'd failed to stop, but a vile, vanquished evil, not long for this world, quelled by us in our righteous deeds. Carcassa. The word sat in my head like a thorn. Somewhere real, somewhere tangible, a place we could torch, scour. The supposed heart of the beast, something to burn. We killed the headlights a mile out as the mountains swallowed us, reducing the world outside to no more than an implication. Hannah was pressed into the corner, half folded around a computer desk, with a headset clammed over her ears, while Jane sat opposite, boots square on the deck, back straight despite the constant sway of our metal chariot. A rifle between her knees. She went over her gear without hurry, a quiet inventory. At the far end, beside the doors, Jack might as well have been built into the hall. The plates on his vest were merged into his frame, his helmet resting in his lap, inexplicably still. He checked nothing. He'd gone over himself a dozen times before we rolled. Only his eyes moved, watchful in the dim, as if he were somewhere he wasn't wanted. My own rifle lay across my thighs, sling tight over my shoulder. The plate over my chest had settled like a second, heavier ribcage. I felt composed. Then the MOC hit a rut, and the shock drove through the bench and up my spine. Hannah's head jerked. The computer slid, and her fingers snapped out to catch it before it fell, nails scraping the plastic. Jane's thin voice filled the muffled space, but not aimed at her.
Relax, Cal,
she murmured. I must have given myself away.
If this goes to shit, they'll come for you and me long before they find her name. She didn't have to be here,
I said. Jack's voice then came from the dark.
She put us on this road. She'll walk down it too. She's a kid, no older than you. When we first plucked you from your cot, you remember those days, huh? Bustling your little drug dens. What a long way you've come, boy.
Jane's gentle hand found my knee before I could say anything. Before I could truly reminisce about the years, I thought jailing punks with cheap pistols was the real fight. First time is always the worst. You know that, right? Have faith that she can handle the field. And besides, she has you. Right? The MOC's engine dropped to a low growl as Hannah hunched over her keyboard, clicking to her fingers' content, muttering some tech wizardry to herself.
Road's quiet.
She said, her voice a soft serenade in my earpiece, oblivious to our words.
I've got 5 bodies on the grounds, armed.
The driver's voice crackled through the intercom, a nameless, loyal hire who owed Jane a few favors.
200 out. 1 minute. They won't see us.
Pulling thermal. Hannah frowned, light on her screen shifting to a bright orange. This place is still hot. Power draw is constant. A tight, humorous breath left her. Excitement, perhaps. Nothing scaled back? I asked.
No.
She shot.
We are exactly where we need to be.
The driver again.
50 out.
We turned to a stop, and the engine died. The rain pressed in. Hannah dragged another window.
I'm mostly blind underground. Make sure your body cams are on.
She admitted, almost impatiently. Jack rose, locking his helmet in place.
We'll get you inside, kid. Vision up.
We dropped our goggles, dimming the world to a flat, green haze. Ramp. Hydraulics groaned, and a cold, wet air knifed in as the rear hatch opened and lowered, revealing the distant, faint glow of Caracasa lurking beneath the mountain, an utter eyesore. Hannah's voice slid in after, steady, wired tight.
Comms, check. Cal.
Here.
Jane. I read you. Jack. All right, Hannah said. Down to the other wall. You'll find a generator and a side gate. 1 guard on patrol.
At last, she looked up from her computer and towards us.
No going back now, huh? Be safe.
She said nothing, her attention returning to her screen.
Jack, take point,
Jane said, and he stepped first into the foliage with her on his shoulder. I followed, boots ringing once on the ramp before the land suffocated us. It closed behind me, sealing Hannah within. We never touched the path. We blitzed through the pines instead, 3 shades hugging trees. Through the branches, I caught glimpses of the dazzling front gate, the lazy shape of a guard in the rain, smoking and shifting under umbrellas, waging battles against boredom.
Service blocked by the fence.
Hannah said in our ears.
No camera cones.
I saw it, a metal shed, squirming with cables, its exhaust droning into the downpour, squatting under rotting rust and mildew. Jack's hands came up, closing into a fist.
You're clear,
Hannah said, keys clacking faintly behind her voice as she locked herself in her box. Jack didn't hesitate, peeling from the greenery, Jane slipping after him, then me, boots sucking in the mud, rifles angled low. The rain ate our noise. He wasn't subtle either, as he drove a pry bar under a maintenance hatch. The panel shrieked and gave, clattering to the ground. Inside was a mess of wires and breakers, labels breached and curling. Jane elbowed in beside him.
Bottom left.
Hannah guided.
Make it ugly.
Jane's fingers found the breakers, and she glanced back at us, the faintest hint of a smile, invisible to anyone without years of knowing her.
You heard the girl.
She threw the switch, and the world coughed. Caracasa's lights snuffed in stages. The bank of courtyard lights popped and died. A gatehouse went black. Windows along the upper floors winked out, and for a heartbeat, the generator screamed, fighting a death sentence. Darkness, in its purest form, fell. A slab of black tar that punched through the rain, damming the resort into a silhouette, a sharp absence against the choked sky. Shouts cut across the yard, then a lone voice.
What the fuck?
He peered from the corner, from the service block, coalescing out of the rain. No helmet, just a hooded jacket, gun hanging loose, his flashlight beam thrashing as he tried to investigate the fail. He never saw Jack as he stepped past me, raising his rifle in a single, smooth arc without breathing, without warning. The shot was a viscous pop through the suppressor. One guard head snapped sideways, and he folded straight down, knees buckling, body thumping into the wet stone. His flashlight spun away, beam carving manic circles before settling.
One down.
I'd expect this. Maybe I wanted it. Still, something clenched in my chest at how little it cost him.
Courtyard's panicked.
Hannah reported, tone sharpening, almost in awe.
2 moving off the main door. Other 2 at the gate, pressing buttons.
Jack found a section of fence where the mesh sagged, dropped to a knee, cutters in hand, and chewed through the links with quick, efficient bites. He slipped through the gap and vanished into the compound. I waited for Jane to follow, but she lingered a moment, watching me.
You good?
She asked quietly.
Fine.
I lied. The dead guard stared up at nothing, rain pooling in his eyes, his blood already diluting into a halo.
Then move.
2 guards were visible by the NV glow, one waving an arm towards the darkened main building, the other scanning the sky as if the weather was to blame. Jane tapped my arm, then pointed. We stacked by a cocktail bar. 3 sights. Hunting. Jack leaned out first and took the closest one. I monitored him on the other. Jane's barrel stayed between them, ready to pick up any misses.
Now,
she breathed. 2 soft pops. 2 white blooms amidst our vision of green. My target jerked and folded over the nearest table, knocking it away. Jax dropped backwards beside a pool, arms flung wide, spinning into the dark.
That's 3.
2 left at the main gate.
Hannah said.
1 just ducked inside the gatehouse. Others at the door.
We crossed the open space at a low run, cutting behind plants and deck chairs. I could see a thin sliver of movement in the booth's glass, a phone screen. Jane held up 3 fingers once we stopped, then folded them down, one by one. The outer guard was turned slightly away, head craned towards the courtyard, calling out to where his friend had stopped existing. I found the soft angle of his neck. Jack took his torso. Jane tracked over both. He collapsed in the doorway, dropping straight into a booth guard leg. Inside, the second man lurched up from his chair, hands tangling with a dead radio, mouth opening, phone light dancing. Jack shot him in the chest, flinging him back into an assembly of blank monitors. He slid down, leaving a half-visible smear through the pane. I thought it might have just been the trick of the rain or delusion brought on by a racing heart, but I knew the reality. That man was smiling. A wicked, devilish grin bewitched across his face as his graying eyes somehow found mine in the dark, filling him with the utmost clarity as he departed this mortal coil. My hands brushed my cross before I could stop it.
No alarm. You're clear.
Hannah said quietly.
A couple figures on thermal inside. No mass movement yet.
Jack nudged a fallen guard aside with his boot and leaned on the metal doorframe, then winced, hard, yanking his head away from the gatehouse where the other corpses lay beside a still-lit phone, and I wondered if I were to remove my goggles, what color of light would ooze from its screen.
Hannah,
He said, forcing his voice out.
get us the fastest route down.
On it. Service, corridor, west side. 2 doors past reception. I'll walk you in.
Jack advanced towards the blind compound, and Jane, once again, gave me her attention instead of following immediately.
They're just meat in the way,
She said.
I know.
I lied again. She huffed, satisfied, and chased her obedient sledgehammer to the front door. The reception was an abandoned mess, the type made in the event of a fire evacuation, stage dressing. For this retreat had never had a real guest.
Fuck.
Hannah spat in our ears.
Thermal's moving. Fast. Both retreating downstairs.
Jack charged past the empty front desk into the corridor that stunk of bleach and something sweet, metallic, and a familiar headache tightened as we hit the first stairwell.
What are we walking into, Hannah?
There was a long pause before she answered.
Only the 2. Just going down.
Any more security?
Jane asked, checking a magazine.
No, it's just them. They're kids.
The word hit like buckshot to Kevlar. This was foul, and we knew it. I saw it in the look we gave each other, in their hesitations before taking that first step, and how they grimaced at the pressure they too felt in their heads. But to turn back now after what she said would be sacrilege. So we descended, hastily, emergency strips of dull amber lighting our way. The headache grew too much, so I lifted my goggles, and soon Jane and Jack did the same, trading harsh green light for smoothing dim yellow one. B1, and landing later, B2. The deeper we went, the air grew colder, but the sweat beneath my armor and skin was hot and sour as my rapid footsteps came back from the walls a half a second late. We followed Hannah's every word as she updated us on our quarry that supposedly was the only living thing in here, growing closer to the core, our true prize, our purpose, that we had to focus on, lest doubt snuck in. At B3, the stairwell opened to a service floor, laundry trolleys lined in perfect rows, carts full of folded costumes. At the far end of the corridor, something moved. We caught up. A duo of small shapes emerged within the spill of the emergency light, too thin, too still, draped in hospital gowns, made into royal garments. One was white, one a sickly yellow. One of them clutched something close to their chest, a soft toy, maybe, or just a bundle of cloth. The other had a paper crown on its head. For a moment, they just stared. 2 bodies, 4 little, cautious, tired eyes, afraid to be caught. My chest locked as my mind returned to a looming case wall that had brought us many sleepless nights. Soon to be spared of 2 faces I could put names to. A small victory, finally, only meters away. Almost served to us on a pity platter. The closest one, the prince in yellow, twitched first, and then he grabbed the wrist of his small partner, and they broke at once, turning, scattering, bare feet slapping on the floor in wild stampedes.
Wait!
Jane shouted, already surging after them. They darted through the fire door we hadn't clocked, slamming into it full body, and it burst open into another stairwell, this one plunging far further into the stomach. The light framed them as wraiths, bones under skin, clinging to the railing as they tumbled down. Jack followed, but I couldn't move, my cross burning cold against my throat like a cursed talisman. I faltered for too long, staring at the open door and the back well beyond, as the echoes of frightened, frantic pursuits bounced up towards me.
What's down there, Hannah?
I asked her, forcing my legs to move, praying that a server farm was all that awaited me. She didn't reply.
Hannah!
Nothing.
Fuck!
I lost them on the way down. I'd flinch. They hit the next landing, took a turn I didn't, and when I reached B4, I came out alone. I snappled pleas into my comms. I met only static.
Hannah, are you there?
More static, a flow steadily hiss that had found a home. My HUD said the link was fine. Battery full, no reason for her to be gone. Except, no, I didn't think that. I couldn't think that. She was safe. Invisible. Just follow the footsteps, Callum, I thought as I nudged through a propelled open door. Rifle first. B4 led to sets. The corridor was a grid of little mouths on either side, rooms dressed like pieces of other lives. A classroom of cartoon letters, a pastel bedroom strung with fairy lights and unicorn posters, a toy doctor's office, a bathroom with no plumbing, a camera mount where a mirror should be. Story time, pool day, dock walk, storm the castle. Each room was far smaller and dirtier than it had looked through a screen, the paint peeling at the edges where the frame never showed. I tapped my body cam. No equipment left behind, not even a single cable. Safe for some red X's where tripods would stand. And no crew. No one. Nothing. The heart of the beast hollowed out, save for 2 scared lures that had lingered behind, fighting every instinct to turn heel and run to the surface, opting for the company of the dead and black stars than this. B5 wasn't marked. Any fabricated fantasy ended. They stopped pretending now. A laboratory with a drain, ringed with ancient rust and something darker, sat in the middle of the floor. 2 ceiling-mounted monitors hung over empty gurneys, their screens a lazy blonde. Trolleys of instruments stood like sentries, some stained with offensive blotches of garnet, stinking of acid. Jane's voice threaded through the humming air. She was on the far wall, kneeling, holding a palm out to the kid in white, who turned herself into the corner, gown hitched over raked knees. She didn't react to her. She'd run out of noise to give. Overhead, something clicked. A black glass dome nested in the ceiling, and a yellow LED winked once at me, as if in recognition. On another wall, flat screens burned. One showed the stairwell behind me, One cycled through the rooms of B4, and one showed this very room. Jack worked a nearby terminal. A cut along his cheek had already clotted, a hideous line that glistened in the light. His fingers moved hard across the keys, each clack flicking another camera feed onto the monitor wall, a looping, self-consuming view. He acknowledged me over his shoulder, and Jane did the same. Mortified, my gaze dropped to the far side of the lab. A door, a metal obelisk of reinforced yellow, the color of hazard tape and rotten teeth. An electronic lock sunk deep into the frame, basking in a status light. The metal around the handle was smudged, smeared, streaked with little bloody hands, blooming across the surface like flowers. I swallowed. The other one, yeah, Jack said, a little tremor in his voice. We're not getting it open. Not tonight, at least, Jane said, still hovering her palm over the girl, afraid that any touch could shatter her. Jack stabbed another sequence into the keys, and the main monitor juddered. His and Jane's own bodies ghosted through B4 on a delay like a muzzle flash. Either of you heard Hannah? There was a sharp, different click from the terminal, an access approval. The screens went black, then returned, but not with the building feed. Something else. A new layout settled. Camera placements we hadn't seen, hadn't known, foreign to the map Hannah had studied. The first image was the courtyard, a harsh, monochrome view from a high angle, and the three of us, frozen in grainy hindsight, cutting through the rain. I watched a delayed version of myself execute men without mercy until the image jumped, skipping frames. Hidden feeds, Jack muttered. This isn't security, this is audience. I finished, staggering to the screens. They were filming us on a secondary array. Jack flickered to the next feed as Jane approached, cradling the silent girl over her shoulder, her other hand gripping a pistol. The woods came into view, stark trunks, wet bark, the world beyond Carcass's line. The images rolled as if mounted mist the treetops, panning slowly, hungrily across the road. The MOC came into frame, what was left of it. It lay at an angle, off the tarmac, as if a giant had reached down and struck it. The rear hatch was peeled away, burned through, and the driver was barely recognizable. He lay in the mud, his upper body twisted and riddled with holes, limbs at angles that defined his joints, mouth agape. Hannah's chair was only visible as a shadow amid hanging cables and dangling panels. Within the torn throat of the MOC, no, Hannah, I tasted bile in the back of my throat. With shaking fingers, Jack changed the feed again. Walls. Not Carcass's polished, anonymous corridors, but narrower, recognizable pathways. An office space with notice boards, studied with curling memos. The motion of the frame suggested a camera mounted on a rolling cart, sifting down hallways it had no right to be. Home, a briefing room, a canteen, an armory, or toilets. Then the interrogation block slid into view. Most of the cells were empty. One was not. Lenny hung in the center of his cell, suspended by ropes that cut into his bloated, pale frame. Where tracksuit fabric had once clung, there was only skin, waxy, molten, filmed with an oily sheen. His head sagged forward, his face skewed and hauled into an obscene look of pain. Across his chest, carved into him, with a tool not made for precision, ran a message. The letters were jagged and uneven. Blood had run freely from each assault, drying in the slack valley of his ribs. Act 2. Written over the canvas of a man who believed he was only a watcher. Jane shot the camera above us, bursting it into fragmented pieces, the girl on her shoulder releasing a straggled half-whimper as if someone interlocked had finally given way. "Rally yourselves," she said to me with shaking breaths, tears welling in her eyes. "We're leaving." "Yeah, no shit," Jack spat, pounding a fist into the keyboard, his composure just as wavered, before he marched back the way we'd come, offering a final look at the stark, mocking yellow door, its secrets would remain as such. The accent was a blur. I couldn't get a full breath, my legs moving on training, not choice. Jack drove us up the stairwell in silence, Jane just behind him with a scrap of white weight over her shoulder, and I brought up the rear, lungs burning, my hand longing for a cross I dared not to touch. We burst back into the reception, and Jack started to speak, some automatic rehash, some half-formed order, the seeds of a plan, but the shot hit him mid-sentence. His helmet spasmed, split. He just dropped. No dramatic exit, just a corpse hitting the tile, spraying blood across the floor. I didn't immediately register what I saw, but then the sound found us. A fiendish crack echoing around the lobby. They emerged from the edges of the room, men and women in plaid masks, snow-white and expressionless, some with cameras bolted into their faces, lenses settled on us with the same calm intent as a barrel. Then the lobby exploded. Glass shattered, plastered coughed dust, and the front desk detonated into splinters as rounds hammered it apart. Jane and I drove behind a support column. The girl on her back didn't make a peep, and I fired without thinking. Short, brutal bursts, trying to keep their muzzles down. One masked assailant flopped behind a planter. Another shifted his weight to film it as if his death was another line in a script we've never read. Jane hurled a flashbang from our foxhole, and then her hand found the back of my vest in a wordless pull to move. A phosphorus explosion of white blinded the room as we broke from our cover and ran, dropping 3 more of them in their dazed scrambling. She went first, and I saw the way some of the masked muzzles hesitated as the small body attached to her cross, their sights like something radioactive, a stamped exemption. Don't hurt the star. I followed, boots skidding, sights snapping between targets, my rounds punching into furniture and flesh alike. As we slammed through the doors and out into the rain, the air hit like a slap, cold, real, a contrast to the synthetic sweetness that soaked this place from the start. For those first few seconds, there were no incoming fire, only the thudding of our boots, the drag of our breath, and the hysterical thud of my heart. At the tree line, more figures gathered, stepping out from between the pines like they were stage curtains, masked, dozens of them. They formed a loose crescent under the moonlight, pale faces turned towards us. Some carried rifles, aimed idly at the ground. Others held cameras and phones, little yellow tally lights staring in anticipation. They didn't engage. They didn't advance. They merely they watched us cross the open, their lenses tracking Jane's bowed head, cradling a girl, in the rugged mess I'd devolved into. For a brief, sickening moment, it felt as if we stepped out of one scene and into another, the revelation to the arena. The MOC waited for us. The MOC waited for us, and when we reached it, their generosity ended, violating the world back into gunfire. The first shot cracked out from the tree line as if some cue had been met. Rounds whipped through the rain, sparking off the MOC's armor, ripping into the ground. Then a bullet found me. The impact hit my side, a massive, blunt jab that ripped the air out of my lungs and nearly ended my days. Heart. Heat flashed under my plates, unforgiving as I collapsed into a door. The second hit tore into my shoulder, disarming me as my body screamed to shut down, to lie still and let it end, ushering myself into that sanctuary into the sky. Jane's hand found me instead, hauling me into the blood-soaked cab where she and the girl had already sheltered themselves. The MOC lurched as she smacked it into gear, snarling the transmission as rounds peppered the metal. My body, stubborn, remembering how to close the door as more rounds splashed over reinforced glass. The vehicle fishtailed once we hit the wet road, then bit and surged down the mountain, hollowing out into the night air. I dragged myself up just enough, conscious slipping, to see a real mirror, a small army of masks lined up like an audience at a roadside show. They didn't chase, they just watched. They recorded. And my eyes fluttered shut. I woke to the taste of plastic, a white ceiling of strip light, a slow, rhythmic beat at my side. Rain smeared the window, dragging the blue-red flash of police lights into streaks, and through them I could make out the wreck of the MOC buried in what used to be a hospital entrance.
Don't move,
a voice said. Jane slumped in a chair, still in armor. Dried blood splattered her. Her rifle sat beside her, while her hands twiddled nervously with her phone.
Where's the kid?
I forced out in a broken wheeze, and the sorrowful image of Hannah hit me fast.
Pediatrics,
Jane said.
they got a word out of her. Camilla. Might be her name. Might not.
Her phone buzzed and she glanced down. Her face went another shade paler.
What is it?
She hesitated before turning the screen. A bright, bile yellow banner slid up over whatever she'd been looking at. Same cadence. All tucked in for the night, handsome? House to yourself. Private browser at the ready. A wide array of SWAT raids waiting for your morbid curiosity. But what's that, my king? A body cam is too tame for you? Ah, I get it. You want to see some heads pop, some divine vigilantism. Well, why didn't you say so? I have just the place. Indulge your fine, like-minded cravings at Yellow King's, the most exquisite site for all your oh-so-special needs. We don't judge. We don't ask. We only show you exactly what you've been too afraid to peek at. Just don't tell anyone what you're watching. It would drive them mad. I didn't realize my new customer used to be my neighbor until I pulled into her driveway. The street name had sounded vaguely familiar when I first read it. A few landmarks on the drive over had sparked something in me. Nothing solid, though, just a prickling sense of recognition I couldn't place. It only clicked when I actually saw my old childhood home sitting right beside my customer's property. I know, it's strange that it took me that long, that I hadn't recognized anything when I put the address into Google Maps, but my uncle moved me out of this quiet neighborhood when I was 6, and I barely remember anything about living on this street or in that house. My girlfriend, Ellie, said that wasn't quite normal, told me gently that it was probably my brain blocking things out on purpose. I sat, gripping the steering wheel long after I'd park, staring at my childhood home. It backed onto a large woodland area, tall trees looming far above the roof. The bungalow itself looked abandoned. Shattered windows, empty bottles scattered across dead yellow grass. Clearly, no one had lived there in a long time. A heavy pressure settled in my chest. For a moment, I considered leaving, but I'd only started my lawn mowing business a few months ago. I needed the money. This woman was my third customer so far. She hadn't called like the others. She'd email instead. Am interested in your service. Every week. Sunday work? I replied that Sundays were fine and asked for the address. She sent it, followed by another message. Door left open Sundays. Money on table. Help self to drink and meal. It struck me as odd that she'd contact someone who lived an hour away instead of a local business, but she'd promised a generous tip. Still sitting in the van, I tried to remember my old neighbor. Elderly, maybe. The emails felt that way, but when I searched my memory for her face, I came up blank. Just another thing lost to my strange childhood amnesia. Her lawn was wildly overgrown, high-knee grass, thick and uneven. The house itself was perfectly normal, a neat two-story place with a front porch, well kept enough that the state of the yard felt odd, almost like a choice. I hesitated, wondering if I should knock or just start the job. In the end, I got to work. Part of me didn't want to meet her yet. I was delaying it and couldn't explain why. As I mowed, my gaze kept drifting to the fence, separating her property from my home. It was enormous, easily 10 feet tall. I couldn't believe something like that had just been approved in the quiet suburban street. But it wasn't just the size. Every time I looked at it, pressure built behind my eyes, the sensation of a memory forcing its way up, while something inside me just resisted, just as hard. The effort The effort made my head throb. Then, for a split second, I remembered hair. Long, black strands spiraling down the fence from the other side, tangled and thin, draped over the timber, clinging to the wood, hanging there like a ragged curtain. I'd frozen on my cheap plastic tricycle. One of the black wheels was missing, so I had to balance my weight just right to keep it upright. It's strange, the useless little details that scramble back when everything else is lost. The hair shifted, and slowly above the lip of the fence, a pale forehead rose. There were eyes, white and cloudy. I only saw them for a moment, but I knew immediately who they were peeking down at. Me. Only me. Then there had been a sound behind me. Maybe a voice, maybe someone calling my name. The eyes vanished. The forehead sank out of sight. The hair slid upwards, strand by strand, slithering back over the fence until there was nothing left at all. Cold washed through my body. I tightened my grip on the mower handles and focused on the lines of grass ahead of me. I didn't look at the fence again. Surely, it had just been my imagination, something I had invented out of boredom. No one could peer over a 10-foot tall fence unless they were standing on stilts or bouncing on some ridiculous ladder. And even then, why would anyone climb that high just to look at a child playing in their backyard? It was too strange to take seriously, too absurd. And yet, an unease bloomed low in my chest and refused to settle. Because that image, hair spilling over the fence, eyes watching, was suddenly one of the clearest memories I had from that house, from that time, clearer than anything else I could recall in over a decade. I shook my head, forced the image away, and got back to work. An hour later, the lawn looked respectable again. I packed my equipment back into my uncle's van. Then I remembered the money. I knocked on the front door and waltzed a bit. She did say to let myself in, but it felt wrong just to waltz into a stranger's house. I waited another few minutes before finally reaching for the handle and stepping inside.
Miss Romana? Are you home?
I called out, remembering her name from the email address. One of the first things I noticed was the ceiling. It was unusually high. It made the space feel wide and open, almost cavernous, and also made it incredibly cold inside. Goosebumps rose over my arms. Most of the ground floor was open plan, so I spotted the kitchen right away. Where a wooden table sat by the counter, there was money laid out neatly on top of it. Beside it, a glass jug filled with what looked like lemonade, ice cubes floating inside. A clean glass, a sandwich on a plate. She'd said to help myself. Still, I hesitated. I felt silly to be cautious, but I haven't even met her. I picked up the money and nearly choked when I counted it. $45 notes. I only charged $60. She mentioned a tip. Sure, but this was excessive. What if she was elderly? What if she miscounted? I took 100 and left the other 100 on the table, just in case. Then, that was when I heard something upstairs. A wheeze, wet and uneven, like air being dragged through damaged lungs. After that, 2 sharp creaks snapped through the house in quick succession, floorboards protesting under sudden weight. My body went rigid. Someone was definitely home. I stared at the staircase.
Hello?
My voice rang too loud in the open space.
Miss Romana?
No answer. I edged closer to the stairs, despite myself, my heart beginning to pound. The noises replayed in my head. What had made them? Had she fallen? Was she hurt? If she was elderly, I told myself, I should check. That was the decent thing to do. But another part of me was screaming to leave. The feeling was sudden and absolute, like stepping into a place you were never meant to enter. Like bait. After a moment, I turned back to the table. I picked up the sandwich so I wouldn't seem rude, my hands clumsy and shaking, and then I got out. When I drove home, I sat in the van for a very long time with the engine off. The sandwich rested on the passenger seat. Eventually, I opened the bread. Inside was butter and raw, red meat. I swallowed, then noticed something else threaded through it. I pinched it between my fingers and pulled. A single hair. slid free. Dark, absurdly long. I told my girlfriend what happened, but left out the part about the strange memory. Ellie laughed. You're scared of a little old granny? I don't know if she's a granny, I said. I've never met this woman. She could be a man for all I know. Are you sure? You said she was your old neighbor, she said, her eyes soft but insistent. The gentle look she always got when she was trying to probe something about my childhood. Are you sure you don't remember anything? That long, black hair entered my mind again. At that moment, I remembered something else. I remembered a single strand had caught in the fence, drifting in the breeze until it detached and floated down to my 6-year-old self. I remembered plucking it up from the air and then playing with it carefully so it wouldn't snap. I had wrapped it around my arm, amazed I could coil it, almost the entire length of my little forearm, like linen around an Egyptian mummy. I shook my head at Ellie's question and told her about the inedible sandwich instead. Ellie laughed again, shaking her head. That poor woman probably has dementia. A week later, I went back. I didn't want to, but Ellie had made me realize I was being ridiculous, and the money mattered. If we ever wanted to move out of my uncle's house, we needed it. My stomach churned the whole drive. Before I even started the mower, my eyes went to the fence again. I remembered long, curling fingers reaching over the top, and once more, I remembered seeing half a face peering down at me, just eyes and a forehead visible above the timber, watching. I reluctantly went inside to collect my payment. This time, she'd left $300 on the table. Beside it, a note, the handwriting thin and spidery. Take all money. Why no drink? My gaze drifted to the jug of lemonade. I filled the glass, intending to pour half of it down the sink to make it look like I had some. Instead, for some reason I couldn't explain, I took a small sip. It was cold, sweet. It was good. After that, the memories returned, stronger than ever. I had a dream that night, a dream about food being thrown over an enormous fence. Sometimes it was roast chicken, still warm inside a plastic bag, juices sloshing against the sides. Other times it was a whole chicken, raw, feathers still clinging to pale skin. Sometimes it was fresh fruit in a cracked plastic container. Other times it was rotting apples and a thick slab of heavy, raw meat. I remembered the hunger. I remembered setting up a blanket over the bushes beside the fence. A small hidden nest where I could crouch and store what I was given. I remembered eating like an animal, devouring whatever was edible before anyone could find me. I remembered my scalp itching constantly, lice multiplying, biting, crawling, with no one bothering to stop them. A whole kingdom of parasites living freely in my hair. Then I remembered the hand. It slipped through the narrow gap between the fences and the bushes where I sat with my back pressed against the timber, rustling the spindly branches. The hand was enormous but gentle. One long finger brushed the tangled hair out of my face. The itching faded. I stared up and saw nothing but the endless length of a thin, gray arm disappearing over the fence. I remembered wrapping my small hands around that enormous finger and holding tight, crying into it. And then I remember an angry voice coming from somewhere. The finger wrinkled gently until I released it, and then the hand vanished. The arm withdrew. When I looked back up, only a faint wisp of dark hair was visible above the fence line. Someone tore the blanket away from my hiding place. They yelled, screamed in disgust. I was sitting on the hoard of food. A lot of it was rotting. There were flies, there were maggots. Hands grabbed my arms and dragged me out of the bushes and away from the massive fence so hard I thought the bone would snap.
Stop!
I screamed. The third time, I went back to mow Ramana's lawn. I did not hesitate. Something had begun to clarify itself inside me. like an image slowly coming into focus, and I knew I needed to speak with her. Ramona. Finally. I didn't know if the memories were wholly real, but pieces were fitting together now, clicking into place with a quiet inevitability. I felt closer to the truth than I ever had before, and instead of making my head ache, it planted something determined inside me. Something that refused to be quiet any longer. I thought maybe my neighbor had been a sweet old granny who babysat me sometimes. Maybe she fed me, maybe she took care of me, maybe she read me stories. Maybe this was the only way my memories were able to return, disguised as something else. Something not quite real, but threaded through the truth. As I started the lawnmower this time, I didn't look away from the fence. I remembered the humming, a low, steady hum, as I lay hidden in the bushes beside the fence. The yelling in the house always softened when I listened to her hums. I remembered being lifted so high I could see over the roof of my house. I remembered being placed on a sturdy tree branch in the forest and being given a dead fox. I remembered biting into the furry flesh, feeling warm blood dribble down my cheek. I remembered sitting in a cocoon of warmth, high above the ground, watching the stars blink into existence. I remembered running into my hiding place between the fence and the bushes, shaking, starving, sick with fear. I remembered someone chasing me.
Henry, you get back here right now, you little shit!
She screamed. She caught my arm and wrenched me around.
Mommy, stop!
I sobbed.
Don't hurt me again!
I remembered my mother freezing, and I remembered something brushing the back of my neck, light and familiar, like long strands of hair. My mother gasped, staring at something above us, terror carved into her face. I looked up. The fingers came. They wrapped around my mother's body and lifted her up, up, up. She was screaming. She went, so I called out.
It's okay, Mommy. She's taking you to see the stars.
There was a deafening crunch, and her screaming stopped. I saw something fly across the sky like a meteor, disappearing into the forest. Hands closed around me. They were so warm when they lifted me, gentle and careful, cocooning me as I shook and clung to the heat. I rose high enough to see over the roof of my house, just like all those other times. I finally remembered seeing her face. The image was clear now, unblurred, impossible to look away from. She was pale and gaunt, her lips stretched too wide across her skull, but her eyes, they were dark, but they were warm.
Did Mommy like seeing the stars?
I asked her. She hummed. My hands shook. I didn't turn the lawnmower off. I walked through her house on numb legs, the sound of the engine fading into something distant, barely there. The front door was open, as it always was. I climbed the staircase slowly. A low groan echoed from above, stretching and deepening as I went. The upper floor was completely open plan, wide and slobbing like an expensive attic, and laid out across it was a very tall woman. Her skin was a shade close to gray. Her face had the weathered features of someone much older than me. Her limbs were long and spindly. She lay on her side, on a soft floor mat that covered nearly every inch of the space. Her body folded carefully, purposefully, as if she made herself smaller for me. Her eyes found mine the moment I stepped inside. I dropped to my knees and sobbed before I could stop myself. Terror and grief and everything I had buried for so long rushed through me all at once, crushing and merciless. Fingers reached out, impossibly large, wrapping around me and drawing me gently towards her. I was pulled into warmth, deep and steady, and my shivering slowly began to ease.
You killed her.
I sobbed.
You killed her, didn't you?
She hummed softly.
Why? Why did you do that?
I said, the words breaking apart as they left me. She brushed my hair back, my cries thinned into small, broken whimpers.
Why didn't she care about me?
I whispered.
Why didn't she care about me? Why did she let me starve? Why did she hurt me? I was just a little kid.
Her warmth held. Her breath stayed slow and even. I fell asleep. When I woke up, I was in bed. Across from me, seated in an armchair, was a little old lady. Her eyes were distant, as if part of her had wandered somewhere far away and hadn't yet found its way back. Still, they stayed on me, steady and patient. We were still upstairs. The massive mat lay stretched across the floor, unchanged. The bed had been tucked into a small corner of the room, like it had been put there for me.
Who are you?
I asked.
What was that thing?
She didn't answer. Instead, her gaze drifted to something beside me. I followed it and saw a folded note resting on the mattress. I picked it up with shaking hands. I cursed with sighs and hunger. But I protect. Sweet little boy, cold and hungry, I carry you to the stars, where she not reach. Lost myself when I took her, but she not hurt you anymore. Forgive me, please. When I drove home, I finally asked my uncle to tell me the truth. I'd always known something horrible happened to my mother, but there were details surrounding the event that, deep down, I think I never wanted to learn. But I feel stronger now. I was ready. He showed me the pictures first. They were me as a little boy. My hair was long and scraggly. I wore dirty clothes that were torn at the seams. My body was mapped with bruises and cuts and burn marks. There wasn't much to know in the end, except the fact that my mother was a monster. And when she was found in the woods one day, half-eaten, a case that would quickly be declared as an animal attack, people called it karma after they learned what she did to me. I continued to visit Ramona. I brushed her hair and cared for her when she was a little old granny. I laid down and listened to her hums when she was something else. I wrote all of this down because, unlike my mother, Ramona deserves to be remembered. I could never tell anyone about her. They would have hurt her or killed her. But I needed someone to know. Ramona may have been a beast, but it wasn't her fault. Even when she lost control, it all came down to an instinct to protect. She was dying. I fell asleep, holding her large hand, and when I woke up, there was nothing. She was gone. Even though she doesn't live there anymore, even though the house is no longer occupied, I still go back to mow her lawn. And sometimes, when the lawn is done, I linger until the night swallows the sky. When I focus on the constellations, it almost feels like I'm rising, slowly, above the roof of the house. My friend got lost in the forest. When I went to look for him, something found me. Blue hour, a time of serenity. For me, anyways, it's the only time of day I feel at peace. The rest of it is filled with paperwork and bland conversation. My escape from this routine is the outdoors. We were outside from dawn till dusk. We will explore the woods, play sports, do odd jobs, and the like. Nowadays, I scratch that itch through camping.
Every Friday evening after work, I load up my old Tacoma and hit the road. Usually I go alone, set up camp off the usual path, start a campfire and cook my dinner, then sleep overnight in the forest and take in the lack of sound as I drift away. I pulled into the clearing off the side of the gravel road, the fallen tree lying in the same spot it had been for years. I've parked here almost every week for the last decade. I took a deep breath of the fresh wilderness air as I stepped out. As I unload my pack for the back seat, I hear the familiar sound of the flowing river just behind me. This is my true home, not my rundown apartment. I took a swig of my water and headed into the woods, following the path I carved out from years of walking it. I walked past the same landmarks I have been for years. The small stream cutting into the soil halfway in. The large boulder, just a few hundred feet from the camp. I know my way. I know every step to take. I reached my campsite, the familiar patch of blueberry bushes guarding the entrance. I would pick a few off, but they aren't in season yet. I carefully step over to them and throw my knit into the moist grass. I pulled my tent from my bag and began to set it up just off the tree line. As I finished up, my phone buzzed in my right pocket. Matthew, my coworker. I invited him out to lunch and come along today. Matthew. Hey, what path do I turn down? Brian. Look for the fallen tree off the side of the path. That's the one you're looking for. Matthew. Thumbs up. I flicked off my phone and dropped it into my back pocket. Since Matt was almost here, I decided to start a campfire so we can cook some dinner. I packed a few cans of baked beans for myself and Matt. I hope you like baked beans. I never asked. I should have asked. I took a swig from my canteen and walked off the campsite into the forest. Blue hour was turning to night, and the woods became invisible to my eye, so I brought along my head torch to aid my search. As I traversed and collected material, my foot kicked something hard. I peered down. A bone. A large bone. I've seen a lot of bones out in these woods, so this wasn't particularly strange. I picked it up and began to inspect it. It was fresh, likely dragged here by another animal within the last few days. I identified it as a bear femur. I've had a few encounters with black bears out here before. I had once had a bear steal my dinner a few years back. I threw the bone back down where I had found it, and finished collecting what I came for. I placed the materials into the center of the fire pit, the same one I've been using since I started camping here. I like the routine. I grab my flint and steel from my coat pocket and begin to strike it. After 4 strikes, a small flame rises from the bottom of the pile. I carefully blow on the flames to feel the fire, and throw a few more dry sticks into the mixture. I started to layer bigger pieces on until I had a nice, high and steady flame. I stepped back from the fire for a moment and sit in my fold-out camping chair. I take a hit of that campfire smell, my favorite scent. I shifted in my chair and fished my phone out from my pocket. I opened my text conversations with Matt and began to type. Brian. Hey, you almost here? You got the fire started. A short while passed till my screen lit up. Matthew. I think so. Brian. Cool, just stick to the path. Brian. Hey, do you like baked beans? Matthew. Thumbs up. Brian. Alright, I'll have a nice hot bowl ready for when you get here. I cracked open both cans with my cruel multi-tool knife and dumped their contents into the old cooking pot. The bottom was black with ash, remnants of previous cooks. I placed it above the fire, suspended from a cooking stand. Smoke quickly began to rise from the inside. I occasionally stirred over the next 10 minutes until they were fully cooked and ready to eat. I portioned the pot into equal helpings and waited for Matt to show. It would be rude to eat before my guests, after all. The wind began to pick up, and the forest was shrouded in darkness. I peered at my phone. It was approaching 9:30 p.m., and there was no Matt in sight. My last text to him was 15 minutes ago. The walk-in takes 10 minutes. I shot another text to Matt. Brian. Hey, you almost here? I waited 2 minutes. No response. Brian. Question mark, question mark, question mark. Are you lost? Nothing. Brian. I'm gonna head up to the path to find you. Just stay put. I slip my phone back into my pocket and I take a deep breath. Don't panic. He's just lost. City boy. Not used to the wilderness. I'll go find him. I push myself off my camp chair and flick on my headlamp.
I place the bowls of beans in my tent and zip it up. That's our dinner, not some animals. I threw a log in the fire before leaving. I stepped back over the berry bush and head right up the path. I called out a few times early in my walk up the path, but heard nothing, so I kept going further and further. I had to be nearing my truck soon. I've been walking for a good while now. Maybe he turned around and left. Not the first time it happened. I thought we were cool with each other. I took a rest for a moment and leaned against a tall tree, turning off my head torch to save battery. I slipped my phone from my pocket and immersed myself into the screen. I slid open my text app again and sent a message to Matthew. Brian, where are you? I'm shouting out here. Do you hear me? Did you leave? Your beans are getting cold. Say something. If you don't respond, I'm going back to camp. Question mark, question mark, question mark. All right. It hurt. A little, anyways. He turned around and left me. I cooked him beans. Maybe he got spooked and left. I don't know. He could have at least told me. I let out a deep sigh and put my phone back into my breast pocket. I took a deep breath of the cold, wild air. I pushed off the log and flicked my light back on. Wait. Where am I? This isn't right. I was just on the path. Wasn't I? My environment had shifted. At least it seemed that way. I didn't even leave the path. I stopped on it. I think. I'm beginning to look around. I was in the center of a small clearing. It was flat, trees and moss everywhere. I tried using my phone. Maybe I could still use the Maps app. I typed in my passcode. Granted, this time a little shaky. I scrolled through my folders, forgetting where I placed the app. It was in a folder called Apple Apps. Duh. I opened it up, and at first was greeted with grids and buffering bars, but eventually it began to piece itself together. Where the fuck am I? My icon adjusted. The circle of my location grew smaller and smaller until it pinpointed me, 10 kilometers from the area of my camp. What the fuck? That's not possible. I've only been walking 10 minutes. I scooped my phone back out and directed my attention to the time on the top of my screen. 12:52 a.m. What? But how? It was just coming up to 10 p.m. I unlocked the phone once again. Hovering on the corner of my text app was a red circle with the number 13 encased inside of it. I clicked on the app, which immediately opened me and Matthew conversation. Brian, hey, do you like baked beans? Matthew, thumbs up. Brian, alright, I'll have a nice hot bowl ready for when you get here. Matthew, thanks. I'm here. Where are you? Question mark. 9:16 p.m. Matthew, are you nearby? I'll wait for you. Wait, was that you? Matthew, you walked past the camp. Stop messing with me, man. Why are you walking back and forth down the hill? Matthew, it's not you. Where are you, Brian? Matthew, I'm fucking freaking out, man. Matthew, please. Please come back. But how? Where did my text go? The text I just sent him moments ago. How did I not see these texts? How did I wander so far? What is happening? And what did Matt mean? It's not you? Who else? Who was out there? I turned around until the error of my phone GPS pointed me back to the camp. The only thing I could do now was walk all the way back. I wouldn't be staying the night. I began to walk, still dazed from the events that just transpired. I searched for a reason in my head. Amnesia is the only thing that made sense to me. How could that be? Did I fall and hit my head while trying to find Matt? I continued walking, carefully making my way through the trees and flora. None of this made sense, but right now, that didn't matter. My only goal was to get to safety. About 20 minutes in, my headlamp began to flicker. The batteries were giving out. I dimmed it to its lowest setting, in hopes it would last for at least a few minutes, but it died, right then and there. I sat down on the cushioned moss below me and rested. I pulled out my phone to check the time. It was now 1:18 a.m. I opened the Maps app again to confirm I was still going the right way. The map began to load in, but before I could see, my screen was cut to black. Another battery drained. Great. There was no way I could make it back without light. There are expansive cave systems around here with very steep drops. One wrong step, and I'll never be found. I guess I found my new camp for the night. At least it was soft, and not too moist. I stretched my legs out in front of me, and let my back hit the ground. I would have to rest here until daylight, and hopefully not freeze to death or get eaten by a bear. I closed my eyes and relaxed my body. I stopped trying to make sense of this situation that could wait for me in the morning. I let my mind go blank and listened to the soft brush of the trees, the sound of my heartbeat in my ear, now slowing, and the sound of sticks and leaves cracking. Wait. I shot up, gripping my multi-tool in my pocket, expecting an animal, worst case a bear. I looked straight but couldn't see. A blinding light was blocking my vision. Suddenly, a voice spoke to me.
Hey, feller. You look like you need some help. Care to join me?
My eyes adjusted. Standing in front of me was an older man with a large gray mustache, donning a trucker hat and coveralls with a flannel shirt covered by a heavy black raincoat. He was skinny. His cheeks sunk deep into his face, and he was covered in grime, but oddly calming. Perhaps a side effect of my current situation. I stood up and brushed myself off. I locked eyes with the man. They were light blue, with something in them.
I saw your light from over there.
He slowly turned around and pointed his long, slender finger towards a structure, one I had failed to see beforehand.
Why are you out here? Did you get lost?
I'm not sure. I was looking for a friend and... Fuck. I don't know how I got here.
Don't worry. I'll take care of you. Come with me.
He extended his hand as if he wanted me to hold it. I reached out to shake it. As our hands clasped, he tightened his grip and began to walk away from me, towards the building. He was unusually strong for a skinny old man. I shook my hand free and told him I was fine to walk alongside him, and reiterated that I wasn't injured.
Okay.
He didn't even turn to face me. He just kept walking. I froze for a moment, watching him leave me behind. Before he could turn around, I began to walk after him. He reached a structure which I now made out to be a cabin. The entire front was illuminated by a lantern resting on the rail ledge. How could I have missed this before? It was glowing, so bright, and yet I walked right past it. In front of the cabin was a large clearing. I couldn't see anything out there, but I saw that the clearing tightened into a path down the way. The old man carefully made his way up the steps and sat in a rocking chair near the door. He rocked back and forth for a moment before speaking up.
My wife's inside. She's preparing you a nice drink and meal. Go in and fill your belly. After that, we'll have a nice warm bed for you.
Well, that's nice of him, I guess. I gave him my thanks and headed up the stairs. I pulled the latch on the bronze handle and pushed the door open, letting out a large squeal from the hinges. It was dim, lit by another orange lantern sitting on the dining table. The cabin looked old. The space was filled with old furniture pieces, and on the walls, paintings and photos of multiple different people. I peered around before landing my gaze on a large, dark figure standing behind the kitchen island. I focused my eyes. It was a larger lady with strawberry red hair, wearing a pink top and a white apron. She was humming a song. Sounded familiar, but couldn't quite place it. I cleared my throat to get her attention. She didn't budge. I then softly spoke.
Ma'am?
She turned around holding a large ceramic mixing bowl, stirring up an unknown recipe with a whisk. She had a large smile on her face. She quickly placed the bowl down and wiped her hands on her apron. She approached me.
Hello, dear. Come in, please. Make yourself at home.
She wrapped her hands around me and gave me a big hug, a warm hug. I let out a small chuckle before she let me go. She introduced herself as Mabel.
Thank you for having me. I'm sorry to barge in like this, but it's been a hell of a night for me.
She let out a laugh, a loud laugh.
Well, you're home now, my dear. I got a nice drink in the making for you. Go on, have a seat.
She smirked at me, staring into my eyes. I grinned back. I popped down onto the old Chesterfield and sat back, relaxing again. Mabel turned back around and started humming again. mixing up a concoction which I assumed to be my drink. The hum was dizzying. I still couldn't identify it, but it was so serene. I reached into my pocket for my phone, forgetting it had died. I patted my side, but didn't feel the familiar lump. I started searching myself, but to no avail. Mabel turned around and saw me frisking myself.
Okay, honey, I'm just gonna go get the final ingredient for your drink. I'll be right back.
A wave of calm washed over me once again. I was safe from the cold, with some nice folk. In the morning, I'll head back to my campsite and pack up. Mabel carried the bowl with her as she exited the cabin. I sat up and peered out the window. I watched as Mabel slowly descended the front steps. As she reached the ground, she began to walk into the large field in front of the cabin. Just before she left the glow of the light, she began to sprint into the darkness in an unnatural way for her size. I was startled, but I don't know why. Nothing is wrong. Why am I startled? She walked back into the light, now at a normal pace. She entered back in, still mixing the bowl. A dark, undefiable liquid stained her pasty, thick hands.
All right, dear. Let me get you a cup.
Thank you. This house feels like home, but why does it feel like home? She grabbed a metal goblet from the cupboard and placed it carefully in front of her. She took a large ladle and began to pour my drink into the cup.
Is 3 scoops enough, dear?
That's plenty, ma'am.
Oh, please. Call me Mabel, hon.
She let out a laugh, a very comforting, maternal laugh. I laughed with her and apologized for not using her name. She handed me the goblet. She had poured herself one, too. She sat down, across from me, and raised her cup in the air.
Cheers, hon.
Cheers. We clinked our cups and drank. She stared at me as I sipped a mouthful. It is room temperature, on the thicker side. I can't describe the taste. I don't know what it tastes like. I think there are clumps in it, but I'm not sure. I finished my drink and went to wipe my mouth with my sleeve. Hold on, dear, here you are. Mabel handed me a handkerchief from her apron pocket. It was hand-stitched. I wiped my mouth clean and extended my arm to give it back. She blocked my hand and pushed it away.
Oh, no, dear. You're gonna need that in a moment. You hold on to it, okay?
Okay. Thank you. Mabel stood up, taking our dishes with her, and placed them into the wash tub, resting next to the counter. She walked back towards the sitting area and halted in front of me. She raised her hand as if to help me up. I obliged. She opened the front door and led me outside. Her husband was gone, no longer sitting on the porch. She spoke softly as she led me down the steps.
Come on, dear. I need you to do something.
I hear cries. Someone is screaming. Are they okay? I'm not sure. They don't sound happy. They sound upset. Why? Are they in danger? Maybe we're going to help them.
Mabel, who is upset? Are we helping them?
I don't know who it is, but yes, we are helping them. We walk, and I start to notice more people. I don't know who they are, but they're watching me and Mabel walk. They're wearing something. I caught a glimpse of one. They're wearing animal skulls on their head, with something carved into their forehead. I can't see that yet. Maybe I will see it soon. The screams get louder, and before I know it, I'm standing in front of an altar. It kind of resembles a crucifixion. Someone is tied to the pole upside down. The area begins to glow as the people light lanterns. I can see who's in front of me now. Strung up. It's Matt.
Hey, Matt, where did you go?
Matt just screamed at me to help. How can I? Matt seems upset. Why is he upset? Mabel put her arm over my shoulder and began to whisper in my ear. We are gonna help him now. I need you to do me a favor.
What?
You need to slit his throat.
What?
Slit his throat.
What? Slit his throat? Why?
I don't know. He needs to be helped, and this is how we help.
Who told us to help?
Our Father, our deity. Oh, he likes you. He told me. When you found the bones, he was alerted. He told me he likes you. Who is he? He will show you. But first, you need to slit your friend's throat to help him. To help our father? Correct. Okay, I need to help my father. I reach into my breast pocket and pull out my crude, trusty multi-tool. I flick the blade open, and I stare at it for a moment. Mabel pulled her arms away from me. The spectators began to chant. I can't understand them. I approach Matt. He's starting to scream again. What's wrong, Matt? His mouth is gagged. Why is he gagged? Why does this feel wrong? I need to help my father, but it feels wrong. I need to help him. Father. I raise the blade and press it against Matt's throat. I pull hard and deep. Blood began to flow from his neck. Someone ran over and placed a bucket under his head, collecting his blood. I swiped at his throat again. Blood came faster this time. So I kept doing it. Over and over and over. Then the blood stopped, and Matt stopped looking at me. I wiped the blade clean with the handkerchief and placed both into my pocket. Everyone cheered and embraced me. I was happy. I helped my father. Life has been pretty good with my family. Father is taking care of us. Me and Mabel cook for our family every day. They love our food. We also make this special drink every now and again. We still help our father. We find more people and give them to Father. Father likes that. He likes their souls. It's what feeds our father. We leave their bones in the woods, so when someone finds them, we find them. And we bring them home as well. I'm happy now. My family loves me. We are very close. We have a lot of fun. I'm glad. I'm glad I'm here. My family, they bring me serenity. Only they make me happy.